Chapter 2088. Could it be that the demon saints of Dark North Mountain have all been killed or injured, and no one has come to reinforce them? Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered to himself. The great demon saint and the 3 demon saints were injured by the Luo Shui clone and must be recuperating in Dark North Mountain. I killed the 4 demon saint, Patriarch Shui Pao, and the newly ascended Azura demon saint. I used the heavenly demon seed jade art to be reborn. Only the 2nd demon saint, Songyu, is still alive. He has been overseeing the northern battlefield and presiding over the overall situation. Thinking of this, he gradually relaxed and muttered to himself, Demon Saint Songyu leads an army of 10 million demons and has to manage several war zones. Perhaps he really can't split himself and can't reinforce the demon army. If that's the case, then tonight's battle will be decided. The battle at Heavenly Lion Pass will also come to an end. Ji Tianqing collected his thoughts and flew toward the palace in the middle. Whoosh! He silently passed through the defensive formation and entered the pitch-black palace. The passageways, doors, and windows of the palace were all lit with dark red gemstones, and the air was filled with black fog and demon qi. The main roads were guarded by demon guards. All of them were tall and sturdy, fierce warriors dressed in armor. However, Ji Tianqing swaggered past them without being noticed. There were a total of 6 tribulation transcending realm generals living in this palace, and they were scattered on the 1st and 2nd floor. In addition, there were several hundred messengers and patrolling guards. Ji Tianqing's goal was very clear. He passed through a stone wall and entered a room. This room was a study, and there were bookshelves around it, piled with many jade slips and letters. A muscular middle-aged demon race expert in black armor was sitting in front of a stone table, reading letters and handling military affairs. Ji Tianqing appeared behind him without making a sound. He quietly shot out a beam of holy white light, which enveloped the person. Whoosh! This middle-aged demon general was completely unprepared and could not resist at all. He was immediately sealed by the white light. His body stiffened and his eyes widened. His face was filled with fear, but he couldn't make a sound. The sacred white light had the effect of purifying all demon energy, and it quickly purified his demon energy. His body melted like snow, disappearing at a visible speed. In a few short breaths, his body disappeared without a trace, and even his soul was purified. From start to finish, the study was very quiet, and there was no sound at all. After the middle-aged demon general was killed, there was no trace left behind, as if nothing had happened. After dealing with a demon general, Ji Tianqing withdrew his right hand and walked toward another room not far away. There was a secret room where a black-robed demon race expert was meditating on a throne made of skeletons. Ji Tianqing passed through the stone wall and entered the secret room. The black-robed demon general was completely demon energy, was the demon saint realm god of the abyss. The corner of Ji Tianqing's mouth curled up into a sneer. He walked in front of the black-robed demon general, waved his palm, and released a golden light, slapping towards his head. The god, the demon god god god, the demon saint god 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 god. He god 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 demon god. But at this time, the black-robed devil general suddenly woke up. He opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianqing. His purple bell-like eyes were filled with calmness and killing intent. Not only was he not panicking, he even had a sinister sneer on his face. Clearly, he had expected Ji Tianqing to attack. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted as well, and he cursed in his heart. As expected, just as this thought flashed through his mind, the black-robed demon general attacked. He raised his fists as fast as lightning and slammed them into Ji Tianqing's chest. Bam! With a dull explosion, Ji Tianqing was sent flying, crashing into the secret room's wall. Crash! The solid black stone wall was smashed into smithereens, sending countless pieces of stone flying. The secret room was also on the verge of collapse, and dust filled the air. Ji Tianqing felt a stabbing pain in his chest, and a warm feeling flowed down his throat. Blood immediately seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He used his energy to blast away the pieces of stone around him as he looked coldly into the secret room. I used the Armillary Heaven secret technique and merged my body with heaven and earth. This person was able to determine my position and even injure me? He is definitely a demon saint. Only a saint-level expert can do that. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing immediately understood. He had been ambushed. It was not that the demon saint expert did not come to his aid, but that he had used a magic treasure to hide his aura and hide in the camp, waiting for him to walk into the trap. At the same time, the black-robed demon general slowly stood up. His purple eyes burned with flames, and his body exuded an extremely sharp and cold aura. He took off his black cloak and revealed his original appearance. Swoosh! A 10-meter-tall devil race expert appeared in front of Ji Tianxing. His body was thin and tough, and he looked like a devil wolf. This person was completely black, and his thick hair shone with a cold light. He had a pair of strong arms, a pair of sharp claws, and a triangular purple eye on his chest. He had a pair of black wings on his back, and a large tail that dragged on the ground. Rather than calling him a demon wolf, it was more accurate to say that he was a werewolf evolved from a demon wolf. Ji Tianxing stared at him. Sensing his powerful aura, he was even more certain that he was a demon saint. 4 of the 5 demon saints of North Underworld Mountain have been crippled. Only the second demon saint, Songyu, is left. He is still bitterly holding on in the northern battlefield. Ji Tianxing wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. He stared at the demon and asked coldly, "If I'm not wrong, you are Songyu, right?" "Ha ha! You are indeed worthy of the title of the number 1 genius of the human race, Ji Tianxing." Songyu grinned coldly and said in a sinister tone, "Originally, I was in charge of all military affairs in the northern battlefield. Naturally, I would not rush to the rescue just because of a defeat in a battle zone. However, you are different. You are the greatest enemy of my race, the most hated thorn in the side of our ancestors. When I received the news that you had appeared in the Heavenly Lion Pass, I immediately rushed over. Even if I have to put down all military affairs and travel day and night for more than 20 days, I will still come and take your head with my own hands." Ji Tianxing knew that Demon Saint Songyu's strength was second only to Great Demon Saint Ling Xian. He had reached the rank 7 Martial Sage realm. Although he had killed ancestor Xue Pao and defeated Azura Demon Saint, he was not confident that he could kill Songyu. "Songyu, it seems that you knew that I was going to attack River Valley and set up an ambush here. In order not to expose yourself, you did not set up a defensive array and hid your identity and aura. You hid here and waited for me. Even the demon race soldiers in River Valley did not know that you were here. Of course, they would not reveal any flaws." Chapter 2089. How can I deal with you, Ji Tianxing, without putting in some effort? As long as I can get rid of you, I have plenty of patience. Songyu sneered, and his tone was venomous. Ji Tianxing also sneered and said in a playful tone, "Although the process was a little complicated, the result is still the same. No matter what, it's good that you're here. It saves me the trouble of looking for you." As he said that, he exuded a murderous aura, confidence, and dominance. Songyu examined him closely and sneered disdainfully. "What? Do you think you can kill me with your strength and lead the Luoshui kingdom to victory?" Ji Tianxing slowly stretched out his right hand. There was a flash of light in his palm, and the sword of burial of heaven appeared. "Isn't that so?" "Ha ha ha ha!" Songyu laughed loudly, and his tone was full of contempt and disdain. "Ji Tianxing, you're too arrogant. I'll let you know that I'm not someone that Patriarch Xue Pao and Ji Shilua can compare to. You want to kill me? Not even in your next life." As soon as he said that, Songyu attacked. His palms shot out a thick fog that was as black as ink. Swoosh! The thick fog spread out and covered a radius of 300 feet. In this area, there were 2 corridors and 3 rooms, but there was no one in sight. Ji Tianxing immediately understood that demon sage Song-yu had been prepared. In the next instant, the pitch-black demonic fog sealed off this area, forming a domain. From the outside, it looked like an area of 300 feet that was sealed by the black fog. However, Ji Tianxing could see that it was a territory when he was in it. It was a dark void that spanned a few hundred miles, and there was only darkness in all directions. Only 2 huge green eyeballs were suspended in the void above his head. They were like 2 large fireballs that emitted a green light. Song-yu stood in the void and looked down at Ji Tianxing. He said arrogantly, "Ji Tianxing, do you think I'll fight with you in the barracks and implicate my soldiers? Too naive. This is my Azure Soul domain. And here, I am the undefeatable ruler. Your life is in my hands. You will definitely die here today." Ji Tianxing frowned and looked gloomily at Song-yu. He secretly probed with his spiritual sense. He quickly discovered that the realm of the Azure Soul was extremely mysterious. It was abnormally sturdy and contained an extremely powerful demonic power. Being in this domain, Song-yu's combat strength doubled. Furthermore, his strength was inexhaustible. Not only was he being suppressed by the power of the domain, but he was also being corroded by the invisible poisonous gas and attacked by the soul secret technique. Before he even started fighting with Song-yu, the Azure Soul domain was constantly releasing soul attacks, desperately stabbing at his soul. He felt dizzy and his consciousness became blurry. Domain? Even a crossing calamity realm martial artist would disdain to use such a method. How dare you use it to embarrass yourself? Ji Tianxing sneered disdainfully. He waved the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and slashed at Song-yu with all his might. Heaven-cleaving sword. As he shouted coldly, a 300-meter-long silver sword light lit up and slashed at Song-yu with a violent force. The silver sword light was condensed from the star divine fire. It was extremely violent and powerful. Song-yu looked at the huge sword slashing at him. He raised his right fist confidently and punched out. Break! A blood-red fist shadow that was as large as a mountain hit the starry sword light with a loud bang, causing an earth-shattering explosion. However, the sword light and fist shadow shattered at the same time. They turned into thousands of light fragments and scattered in the void. Ji Tianxing's ultimate sword technique had been easily broken by Song-yu. Ji Tianxing, if this is all you have, you should admit defeat and accept your death. Song-yu bellowed contemptuously. He waved his fists again and instantly blasted out 36 blood-red fist shadows at Ji Tianxing. Destroy. Every blood-red fist shadow was as large as a mountain and contained the power to destroy everything. The 36 fist shadows blasted out at the same time and arranged themselves in a mysterious demonic formation. Their power increased by several times. In an instant, Ji Tianxing was drowned by the fist shadows. It was as if he had fallen into a sea of blood. However, he did not panic in the face of danger. He used all his strength and slashed at Song-yu with the sword of burial of heaven. Star-shattering. The sword of burial of heaven shone brightly with silver light mixed with 5-colored divine lightning. 49 slashes were unleashed in an instant. Bang, 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 bang. 49 sword lights collided with 36 fist lights, producing a series of loud, muffled sounds that reverberated intensely in the void. The sword lights and fist shadows collapsed at the same time. They exploded into millions of fragments and danced in the void. It was a dazzling sight. The violent and shocking shockwave fiercely struck Ji Tianxing and Song-yu, forcing them to retreat 3,000 meters. When Song-yu saw that Ji Tianxing was safe and sound, his pupils constricted. He bellowed, "Little B****, you still have such strength in my Azure Soul territory? I underestimated you before. No wonder you dared to be so arrogant. However, this is not enough to save your life. Let's see what else you can do." As he spoke, Song Yu waved his hands and formed a mysterious incantation. He controlled the territory to attack. Suddenly, tens of thousands of blood-red sharp blades and hundreds of shadow-fiend wolves as large as mountains appeared in the void. Countless blood-red blades that were as sharp as fire were arranged into a mighty sword formation that pressed down on Ji Tianxing. Hundreds of shadow-fiend wolves as large as mountains roared ferociously. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced at Ji Tianxing. Even the two dark green eyeballs in the void shot out beams of dark green light, aiming at Ji Tianxing's vital points. Invisibly, there were many sharp spiritual soul blades that stabbed at Ji Tianxing's spiritual soul. He was immediately in danger and was surrounded by danger. The situation was critical, and he had no choice but to use the spherical heaven secret skill. He stepped on the 7 steps of the demonic dragon and dashed left and right in the void. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Every moment, his body would flash a few times and move to different positions. The blood-red light blades, the dark green light, and the claws of the shadow-fiend wolves always brushed past him. He dodged all of them. Song Yu saw that Su Mo had a unique skill and was difficult to deal with. His face turned grave and the hatred in his eyes grew. He used all his strength to control the territory and unleashed his strongest attack. In a short period of time, Ji Tianxing had dodged tens of thousands of attacks. His life was hanging by a thread each time. However, his strength was low and he had not broken through to the martial sage realm. In the end, he was hit by a blood-red sharp blade. Swoosh! A 3-foot-long blood-red sharp blade brushed past his back. It tore his white robe and left a bloody wound on his back. Fortunately, the wound was shallow and did not hurt his bones. Only blood seeped out. However, the wound immediately turned as black as charcoal and was about to rot into ashes. Chapter 2090. Although they were all demon sages, there were differences in their strength, talents, and skills. Ji Tianxing was a half-step to martial sage, but he had cultivated many secret skills of the divine path and had mastered various trump cards. As such, his true combat strength was comparable to that of a rank 4 or 5 martial sage. He had used all his strength to kill ancestor Shui Pao and Azura demon sage. How difficult would it be to defeat demon sage Song Yu? Song Yu, you probably don't know that I use the wind-fire calamity to temper my body every time I go through the calamity. After going through the 9 calamities, my physical body has been tempered to the extreme. With the help of the supreme secret skill of body tempering, my body is indestructible. Do you think you can harm me with the soul-devouring poison? Ji Tianxing stared coldly at Song Yu and sneered, "Put away these useless and despicable tricks." As he spoke, he used his powers to heal his wounds and they immediately healed. Song Yu used his spiritual consciousness to check on Su Mo and saw that the wounds on his back had healed instantly. Not only had the wounds healed and the blood stopped flowing, but even the flesh that had been corroded and turned black had recovered. Song Yu was shocked and shouted in disbelief, "This is impossible! Who in the world dares to use the calamity to temper their body? You are crazy!" Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile and he said in a mocking tone, "The world is big and there are all kinds of strange things. It is not something you can imagine. No matter how capable you are, I am already in an invincible position. You should give up as soon as possible." Su Mo's tone was full of confidence, causing Song Yu's face to change drastically and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Even if your physical body is strong, I don't believe that your spiritual soul can be so powerful." As he spoke, Song Yu formed hand seals with both hands. In the blink of an eye, he formed 12 hand seals and executed an ultimate secret technique. Soul-slashing sickle. The Azure Soul territory, which had a radius of a few hundred miles, immediately released a terrifying spiritual power, which condensed into a huge black sickle. The sickle was 1,000 feet long and as black as ink. It was filled with a cold death aura like the weapon of the Grim Reaper. Slash! Song Yu roared angrily and pointed at Ji Tianqing with both hands. The huge soul-slaying scythe immediately slashed down from the sky towards Ji Tianqing. At the same time, the realm of the Azure Soul erupted with a powerful suppressive force, suppressing Ji Tianqing. It was as if he had been sealed in ice. His body stood stiffly on the spot, unable to move at all. At this moment, Song Yu gave it his all and unleashed his strongest ultimate move. Ji Tianqing was unable to break free or escape. He could only watch helplessly as the soul-slaying scythe slashed down. Although his physical body was strong, the soul-slaying scythe was an illusory soul attack. It would not be obstructed by his physical body and would directly slay his soul. If his divine soul was shattered, he would die without a doubt. After Song Yu finished casting the spell, he stared at Ji Tianqing with a scorching gaze and revealed a cruel sneer. So what if your physical body is strong? I'll directly destroy your divine soul and scatter your soul. In the next instant, the soul-slaying scythe slashed down on Ji Tianqing. The strange soul-slaying scythe passed through his body without any hindrance and slashed towards the divine soul golden sword in his mind. However, an even more unbelievable scene occurred. Just as the soul-slaying scythe was about to strike the divine soul golden sword, the divine soul golden sword suddenly lit up with a white light that shot into the sky. Swoosh! That holy, gentle, and pure white brilliance blossomed like fireworks, protecting Ji Tianqing's entire body. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound of thunder. The soul-slaying scythe was shaken by the white light and collapsed on the spot. The huge soul-slaying scythe turned into thousands of wisps of black gas that drifted into the void. Ji Tianqing was unscathed, but Song Yu suffered from the recoil. He staggered back a few steps as blood seeped out of his nose and mouth. He had used the power of his soul to cast the soul-slaying scythe. Now that the soul-slaying scythe had been destroyed, he naturally suffered from the recoil. His divine soul was shaken, his consciousness blurred, and his vision turned black. Moreover, the entire Azure Soul domain was shaking, and cracks appeared on the edges. Song Yu was shocked and furious. He stared at Ji Tianqing in horror and roared at the top of his lungs, "No! This is impossible! What kind of method did you use to actually block my killing blow?" Song Yu could clearly sense that the sacred white light was like divine power. It contained unparalleled divine power and had a natural suppressive effect on demonic power. He could not believe that this was a power that Ji Tianqing could control. Only Ji Tianqing knew that it was the divine light released by the heaven-mending pearl. With the heaven-mending pearl protecting his divine soul, no one in the world could harm his divine soul. This was what he meant by being invincible. Haha, you're just a little great demon saint. To the world, you're just a drop in the ocean, an ant. There are too many things that you won't believe and can't imagine. Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully. He swung the burial of heaven again and charged at Song Yu. God-slaying sword. This was the 8th sword of the burial of heaven's 9 swords. Its power was terrifying. If Ji Tianqing broke through to the immortal state, this sword could kill an immortal. 3 giant swords that were thousands of feet long and surrounded by lightning slashed at Song Yu. At that moment, the void domain within a few hundred miles was illuminated by colorful lightning. It was gorgeous. Song Yu's divine soul was injured, and his mind was unstable. He wanted to dodge in a hurry, but he could not. He only managed to dodge 2 sword beams, but he was still hit by the 3rd giant sword. Bam! With a deafening sound, Song Yu was sent flying by the giant sword and crashed into the edge of the void domain. A deep wound was left on his chest, revealing the dark purple demonic bone inside. Blood gushed out like a stream. Fortunately, he was powerful and managed to dodge the fatal blow. If he had been slightly slower, the giant sword would have hit his head and destroyed his physical body. Demon Sage Song Yu, who was a rank 7 martial sage, had been severely injured by Ji Tianqing and ended up in such a sorry state. He was so humiliated and furious that he let out a hysterical roar. Ji Tianqing, I swear to tear you into pieces and burn your bones to ashes. You're so angry that you're starting to speak crazy words? Ji Tianqing attacked Song Yu with his sword, causing sword beams to fill the sky. He continued to provoke Song Yu with words. If you immediately give the order for all the demon race in the north to return to North Underworld Mountain, I can spare your lowly life. Otherwise, you will follow in the footsteps of ancestor Shui Pao and Ji Shiluo and die under my sword. By then, the 5 great demon sages will either be dead or crippled. The ancestor demon god's wings will be cut off and he will not be far from death. Song Yu was furious. He roared and cursed as he attacked Ji Tianqing with all his might. You're delusional. The ancestor demon god is a noble and unparalleled god. He is an existence that looks down on the galaxy. How can a worm like you be a match for him? Aren't you so anxious because you are worried that the people of Luoshui Holy Kingdom will be slaughtered? Ha 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 ha. This seat wants to see the look on your face when you're enraged, yet unable to do anything. Chapter 2091. Back in the Central State, Ji Tianqing had seen the evil nature of the demon race. He hated the demon race so much that he would not rest until one of them was dead. A cold-blooded, murderous, and inhumane race like the demon race should not exist in the world. He had sworn long ago that he would kill all the demon race in the world. He would take revenge for himself and his friends, for the races of the world, and for the common people. Song Yu, you've lost your mind to madness. Die. Ji Tianqing swung his sword with his right hand, sending out thousands of cold starlight. The thousands of sword lights formed a formation to attack Song Yu. At the same time, his left palm sent out endless golden light, forming a golden dragon that shot forward. Celestial Dragon Palm. Bam! The 1,000-foot-long golden dragon slammed into Song Yu and sent him flying. The thousands of starlight sword lights enveloped his figure and furiously attacked him. When he retreated 10 kilometers away and destroyed the sword lights that covered the sky, a few tens of bloody scars had appeared all over his body, and he was dripping with blood. The tide of the battle had turned. The Blue Soul Domain could no longer suppress Ji Tianqing. Song Yu's injuries worsened, and his strength rapidly weakened. He knew that if he continued to fight Ji Tianqing, his situation would only worsen. He was forced into a corner, so he no longer had any scruples and used his last forbidden secret technique. Demon Wolf Transformation. Song Yu's eyes turned red in anger, and his body burned with bloody flames. Roar! In an instant, his body turned into a cloud of black mist and spread out in the void. The next moment, he became a 1,000-foot-tall, pitch-black demon wolf as large as a mountain. This was the legendary Nine-Hell Demon Wolf, as famous as the three-headed hellhound. They were both ancient demon beasts that guarded the nether world. The nine-headed demon wolf's body was lithe and majestic. Its 4 thick hooves stepped on dark green flames, and its fur was surrounded by dark blue soul fire. It had 3 eyes, 2 as red as snow, and 1 enormous eye on its forehead. It was as frightening as a pitch-black abyss. There was also a pair of wings on the back of his shoulder blade. When they were spread out, they were incomparably wide. They were more than 3,000 feet wide, and seemed to be able to cover the sky and cover the sun. The nine-nether demonic wolf raised its head and roared. It descended from the sky and pounced towards Ji Tianqing. It actually spoke human language, and roared with overflowing killing intent. Ji Tianqing, you forced me to do this. Every time I burn my blood soul and transform into a 9 underworld demonic wolf, my vitality will be greatly damaged and I will lose 100 years of my cultivation. My strength and realm will also drop. But in order to kill you, it was all worth it. Just as he finished speaking, the 9-nether demon wolf had already pounced in front of Ji Tianqing, waving its huge front claws and smashing down fiercely. Ask the heavens with the horizontal sword. Ji Tianqing hurriedly raised the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and raised it above his head, assuming a defensive posture. A gigantic sword shadow that was thousands of feet long appeared above his head, blocking all attacks. Boom! The 9 netherworld demonic wolf's claws slammed down, instantly shattering the pitch-black sword shadow and sending him flying. While he was still tumbling in the void, his face was already pale as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with intense shock and disbelief. Is this the power of an ancient demon's secret technique? Song Yu was originally a 7th-stage demon saint, but after transforming into a 9 nether demon wolf, his strength increased by more than 5 times. Right now, his strength has reached the 8th-stage demon saint, which is comparable to the great demon Saint Ling Xian. In addition to the shock in his heart, Ji Tianqing became even more cautious. He hurriedly circulated his cultivation to suppress his injuries and waved his palm to release the 5-colored divine thunder, forcing the 9 nether demon wolf to retreat. However, the 9 nether demon wolf was incomparably strange. Its figure flashed and disappeared into the void. In the next moment, it actually teleported 100 miles and appeared behind Ji Tianqing. "Little bastard, go to hell!" The 9 nether demon wolf roared and slammed its claws down from the sky towards Ji Tianqing's head. The two of them were too close. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was wrong and wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Heavenly Dragon Slash! At this critical moment, he could only hold the sword of burial of heaven tightly with both hands and use all his strength to release the heaven-splitting dragon shadow. Roar! The huge sword light carried the sacred heavenly dragon shadow and let out a sonorous dragon roar as it brazenly struck the 9 nether demon wolf. Bam! With a loud explosion, the huge sword and the heavenly dragon shadow were smashed into pieces at the same time, creating a destructive shockwave. The 9 nether demon wolf was also sent flying and tumbled into the void 20 miles away. However, its figure was still in midair when it disappeared with a whoosh. Immediately after, Ji Tianqing felt the aura of death approaching, and his back was covered in cold sweat. He didn't need to turn around to look. His divine consciousness had already discovered that the ferocious 9 nether demon wolf was quietly appearing behind him. The 9 nether demon wolf opened its bloody mouth and spat out a torrent of soul fire that poured down like a flood. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing could only hold the sword of burial of heaven tightly with both hands and use his secret technique. Black Tortoise Sacred Sword. The sword of burial of heaven bloomed with endless black light and condensed into a huge black tortoise phantom that protected Ji Tianqing. Boom, boom, boom. The torrential blue soul fire poured down and fiercely bombarded the black tortoise phantom, creating a series of muffled thunderous sounds. After 2 breaths, the blue soul fire dissipated. The black tortoise phantom was also defeated. Ji Tianqing's body was burned by the soul fire in more than 10 places, and he was in extreme pain. However, he gritted his teeth and held on, not letting out a cry of pain, and circulated his energy to get rid of the soul fire. After 10 breaths, even the dozens of charred wounds on his body were quickly healed. He continued to fight with the 9 nether demon wolf, carefully dealing with it. The 9 nether demon wolf was eager to kill him, so it attacked wildly without caring about anything, and its power was extremely terrifying. He didn't fight the 9 nether demon wolf head-on, but used the mysterious heavenly dragon's 7 steps to circle around it. This way it was effective. No matter how fierce the 9 nether demon wolf was, it couldn't do anything to him for a while. He was occasionally hit by the 9 nether demon wolf a few times, but he only suffered light injuries. With the powerful recovery ability of the undying body, he could quickly recover to his original state. As time passed, 45 minutes quickly passed. Ji Tianqing and the 9 nether demon wolf had exchanged tens of thousands of blows, and they had consumed more than half of their spiritual energy, and their strength became weaker and weaker. Especially the 9 nether demon wolf, Its aura became more chaotic and manic. It roared angrily and pounced on Ji Tianqing, but Ji Tianqing always dodged it. Finally, the nine-nether demon wolf seemed to have a premonition and made up its mind. Its aura suddenly erupted to the extreme, and endless black light accumulated in the third eye on its forehead. Ji Tianqing, goodbye. It grinned coldly, and the third eye of the netherworld released a mysterious black light beam, which fiercely bombarded Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's expression suddenly changed, and his pupils shrank as a thought appeared in his mind. This is the power of annihilation. When he was going through the tribulation, he had seen the terrifying power of annihilation. This was a power that surpassed the heavenly wind, astral fire, heavenly lightning, and stars, and represented destruction and death. No matter how strong his physical body was, it was impossible to block the bombardment of this annihilation light beam. But he didn't have the corresponding ultimate move to block it. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing could only attack. He raised his right palm and released endless golden light. Chapter 2092. The dazzling god-slaying spear was surrounded by golden flames. With the power to pierce through everything, it collided with the annihilation light pillar. Boom! Crack! There was a thunderous sound that reverberated in the void for hundreds of miles. At that moment, time seemed to have slowed down by dozens of times. Ji Tianqing and Song Yu could see with their own eyes that the god-slaying spear pierced through the mysterious annihilation light pillar. The 300-meter-long annihilation light pillar started to crack. It turned into millions of black fragments that scattered in the void. In a short moment, the god-slaying spear pierced all the way through and completely destroyed the 300-meter-long annihilation light pillar. At the same time, the god-slaying spear's power was completely exhausted. It turned into specks of golden light and dissipated in the void. Ji Tianqing's trump card had finally blocked Song Yu's final attack. As it turned out, he had made the right choice. Song Yu saw the annihilation light pillar shatter with his own eyes. His heart turned cold. Disappointment and anger surged in his eyes. However, this was already his final trump card. His time was up. Swoosh! Just as the black fragments scattered in the sky, his figure disappeared into the void. He had quietly escaped. The next moment, he had escaped from the Azure Soul domain and appeared in the sky above the demon army camp. However, he did not stop. With a flap of his huge wings, he streaked across the night sky like a black shadow and disappeared into the horizon. There were many patrolling guards in the demon army camp. They all saw this scene. However, everyone could only see a black shadow streaking across the sky above the Manchuan Valley. Then, it disappeared without a trace. Most people did not know what was going on. Only a few of the stronger ones could vaguely see that the black shadow seemed to be a black demon wolf that was as huge as a mountain. At the same time, the Azure Soul domain suddenly shrank and exploded with the strongest suppressive power. Ji Tianqing knew that Song Yu had escaped. He was about to break out of the Azure Soul domain to chase after him. Unfortunately, there was a powerful force coming from all directions. It was as if the sky and earth were collapsing and pressing down on him. He was in a hurry to kill Song Yu. He could only enter the sword of burial of heaven and rush out with all his might. Shwa! The sword of burial of heaven, which was surrounded by silver flames, passed through the void with great difficulty and was about to penetrate the barrier of the domain. But at this moment the Azure Soul domain exploded. Boom! The realm of the Azure Soul exploded with green flames and icy blue soul fire. Like a huge mushroom cloud, it rose in the Devil Army camp. An earth-shattering boom shook the entire valley, causing everything within a radius of 1,000 miles to shake. Countless ravines appeared on the ground, and the surrounding mountain peaks also cracked, causing countless rocks and soil to collapse. As for the Devil Army camp, it was even more devastating. The few palaces in the middle were all blown to ashes, and the hundreds of houses and buildings in the surroundings were all blown into ruins. It was only after the soaring soul flames and smoke had dispersed that the swaying river valley finally calmed down. In the center of the valley, there was a huge pit that was 100 miles wide, like an abyss. At least 100,000 demon race soldiers died in this explosion, blown to smithereens. The entire flowing river valley was thrown into chaos, plunging into extreme fear. Countless devil race soldiers surged out of the camp, searching for their commanders and blindly searching for the attacker. But the 300,000 soldiers were in chaos, and they could not find the cause. They would never imagine that the person who had caused this disaster and chaos was their commander and leader. In the pitch-black pit that was 100 miles wide in the middle of the flowing river valley, the sword of burial of heaven flashed with black light as it burrowed out of the soil and rubble. Shwa! With a flash of light, Ji Tianqing flew out of the sword and stood in the night sky. He held the sword of burial of heaven and carefully examined it. Seeing that the sword of burial of heaven was undamaged, he was relieved. Fortunately, you have become a sacred sword, so you were not injured by the Azure Soul domain. As he spoke, he looked around at his surroundings. Seeing the flowing river valley in a mess, with broken walls everywhere, and the demon soldiers in a mess, he couldn't help but frown. Song Yu is truly vicious. In order to successfully escape and prevent me from pursuing him, he did not hesitate to detonate the Azure Soul domain. Even if he destroyed the defenses and camps of the flowing river valley, causing the deaths of hundreds of thousands of devil race soldiers, he did not care. The sword of burial of heaven withdrew its light and immediately calmed down. The sword of burial of heaven's voice sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. This is not your first day in contact with the devil race. Is it strange that Song Yu would do this? Ji Tianqing did not respond. He murmured to himself, Song Yu is in such a hurry to escape. It must be that the time for the demon wolf transformation is up. He cannot maintain the 9 hell demon wolf form and will immediately suffer a backlash and fall into a weakened state. This is a rare chance. I must find him as soon as possible to kill him. However, before I go after him, I must take care of the flowing river valley's MO army. Saying this, he hurriedly gripped the sword of burial of heaven and flew to the edge of the flowing river valley. The saint-level defensive array covering the flowing river valley had been shattered by the explosion and was slowly recovering. Ji Tianqing used 30 breaths of time to cut open 5 openings in the defensive array. Each opening was more than 100 feet tall and 50 to 60 feet wide. It was like a large door. After opening 5 openings, he flew out of the flowing river valley and flew toward the night sky in the north. The great commotion in the flowing river valley naturally alarmed the human soldiers lying in ambush outside the valley. When the generals saw the chaos in the flowing river valley, they were overjoyed and cheered excitedly. Marshal Ji has succeeded. Wonderful! Marshal Ji has created a disaster in the devil army camp and successfully plunged the camp into chaos. This is the signal Marshal Ji gave us. What are we waiting for? Kill. Charge into the flowing river valley and exterminate the devil race. The soldiers cheered, and a loud bugle horn resounded in the night sky. Soon, 5 generals led 500,000 elite soldiers and charged into the flowing river valley from all directions. These human soldiers had been honing their strength for a long time and had long since accumulated a surging fighting spirit and killing intent. After passing through the opening in the array, the soldiers were like tigers in a flock of sheep, slaughtering the devil race in the flowing river valley. A great battle was about to erupt. The clashing of weapons, shouts, and screams interweaved into a deafening flood of sound waves that reverberated through the flowing river valley. The devil race camp was ablaze with dazzling radiance of magic power, erupting with gales and shock waves. One after another, the corpses of devil race soldiers fell into the ruins. In a short 15 minutes, the flowing river valley was littered with corpses and rivers of blood. The devil race army was already in chaos, and now that they were surrounded by the human army, they were naturally routed. From the very beginning, the outcome of this great battle was decided. The bitter and bloody battle lasted for 4 whole hours before it ended. The more than 400,000 Devil Race soldiers in the flowing river valley were completely wiped out. Only a few managed to escape with their lives. Chapter 2093. The sky was getting brighter. In the Commander-in-Chief Palace of the Heavenly Lion Pass, the lights were still on in the meeting hall. Lu Baishuang sat on the throne of the Commander-in-Chief, resting his face with his hands. Ever since Ji Tianqing had led the army out, she had been waiting for news. The guards at the entrance of the main hall looked down from the mountain from time to time, looking forward to the army's triumphant return. Time passed quietly, and the sky was getting brighter. Finally, when a ray of light appeared in the sky, a messenger guard rushed into the main hall. "Lord Saint Emperor, good news! Good news!" As soon as the young messenger guard rushed into the main hall, he began to cheer in high spirits. His tone was filled with indescribable excitement. The silence in the main hall was broken. Lu Baishuang opened her eyes and looked at the messenger guard with shining eyes. She asked in a dignified tone, "Did our army win? What's the situation? Quickly report." The messenger guard respectfully knelt on the ground and reported in a sonorous voice, "Lord Saint Emperor, our army won a great victory and took back the flowing river valley in one fell swoop. Our army only lost about 60,000 men, but exterminated more than 400,000 demon soldiers. Only a dozen escape. Generals Zhao and Chun led 200,000 elite soldiers to guard the flowing river valley and take care of the follow-up matters. The other 3 generals have already led their armies and will be returning soon." Hearing such a perfect report, Lu Baishuang could not believe it. She stood up excitedly. "Great! The flowing river valley is a great victory. This is definitely the final blow to the demon army." Ji Tianqing really did not disappoint this emperor. He actually created such an amazing achievement and won so beautifully. This emperor will personally come out and welcome the victorious return of the soldiers. As her voice fell, the guards in the main hall all knelt down and saluted, congratulating the Saint Emperor, and the heavens blessed the Baishuang Empire. When the sun rose, Lu Baishuang, dressed in luxurious clothes and wearing the Saint Emperor's phoenix crown, came to the Sky Lion Pass with a majestic guard of honor. She sat in an exquisite and luxurious phoenix carriage, looking to the north with a smile, waiting for the victorious return of the soldiers. On the ground in front of the phoenix carriage, there were a dozen or so white jade tables with rows of wine bottles on them. Every wine bottle was filled to the brim with jade nectar wine. This was the reward for the meritorious soldiers. About an hour later, a muffled rumbling sound came from the mountain range outside the pass. A majestic army was galloping from the north, bringing with it a cloud of dust. This army had 100,000 soldiers, and the general was Xiewen. Following closely behind this large army was Zhong Lin's 90,000 soldiers. At the end of the line was another general, leading 80,000 elite soldiers. Even though these 3 armies looked tired and were covered in blood and dust, they were still able to hold their ground. However, the banners of the army were fluttering in the wind. The soldiers were hot-blooded and their morale was high. The army arrived at the Heavenly Lion Pass one after another. When they saw Lu Baishuang's honor guard, they all knelt down to pay their respects. Lu Baishuang stood up and began to commend the soldiers. After that, the 3 generals and dozens of commanders came to the front of the phoenix carriage and drank the celebratory wine that Lu Baishuang had given them. Lu Baishuang also announced in public that he would reward every meritorious official and every soldier who had participated in the battle. The jubilant and lively atmosphere lasted for a full hour. Finally, the 3 armies returned to the Heavenly Lion Pass to recuperate. Only Xiewen and Zhonglin were left. They came to Lu Baishuang and reported the details of last night's battle. After listening, Lu Baishuang frowned and asked doubtfully, "Since you have won a great victory and the army has returned, why didn't Vice Commander Ji come back with you?" Xiewen and Zhonglin were stunned, and their expressions were a little awkward. Reporting to Lord Saint Emperor, since the beginning of the battle, this general has not seen Vice Commander G. Vice Commander G sneaked into the flowing river valley alone to create chaos and caused an earth-shattering explosion that destroyed an area of 100 li. Because of this general and the others could smoothly kill their way into the flowing river valley. However, Vice Commander G is nowhere to be seen. Perhaps he has other plans? Lu Baishuang's expression changed and his eyes dimmed. A trace of worry flashed through his eyes. There was an explosion in the flowing river valley that destroyed an area of 100 li and killed more than 100,000 demon soldiers? So this is Vice Commander G's doing, but why is he nowhere to be seen? Did you carefully clean up the battlefield? Why didn't you search for Ji Tianxing's whereabouts? Xiewen and Zhonglin were speechless. After hesitating for a moment, they explained. This general has always believed that Vice Commander G is strong and will not be in danger. Lord Saint Emperor, please do not be impatient. You must also believe in Vice Commander G. With his strength, who can hurt him? He will definitely return safely. Perhaps he was delayed by something. Xiewen and Zhonglin tried to persuade him, but it was useless. Lu Baishuang's expression became more and more solemn. After thinking for a moment, he ordered in a deep voice, "You two, immediately return to the flowing river valley. No matter what, you must find Ji Tianxing." Xiewen and Zhonglin both showed a difficult expression and felt strange. Lord Saint Emperor is worried about Vice Commander G's safety. This is human nature, but isn't she being too nervous? With Vice Commander G's strength, he will definitely be safe. Why is Lord Saint Emperor in such a hurry? Can't you wait a little longer? Of course, these words could only be said in their hearts. They didn't dare say it out loud. They both felt that Lu Baishuang was overly concerned about Ji Tianxing. What? You don't want to go? Lu Baishuang saw that the two were silent and coldly shouted in a dignified tone, "Then this emperor will go find him personally." After saying that, she expressionlessly waved her sleeve and flew into the sky in a flash. Lord Saint Emperor, please calm down." Xiewen and Zhonglin hurriedly chased after her, but were quickly shaken off by Lu Baishuang. Lu Baishuang was anxious and worried about Ji Tianxing's safety, so she hurried with all her might. She flew gracefully, and every step she took brought her a distance of 5 kilometers. Her figure flashed continuously in the sky. After a short 2 hours, she arrived in the sky above the flowing river valley. In the messy flowing river valley, hundreds of thousands of human soldiers were busy cleaning up the battlefield and rebuilding the fortifications. The abyss in the middle was the most eye-catching. It was a ghastly sight. Lu Baishuang stared at the abyss for a while and suddenly frowned. Her eyes flashed with a deep sense of worry. It's the aura of a demon saint. Only a devil saint realm powerhouse would be able to cause such terrifying destruction. Ji Tianxing must have fought with a demon saint to leave behind such traces and aura. Even if he is talented and powerful, he is too young. This time, he is most likely dead. Thinking of this, Lu Baishuang's face became more and more ugly, and her heart became more and more anxious. Chapter 2094. Half an hour passed. Lu Baishuang stood in the sea of clouds above the flowing river valley and continued to search. She had already searched the Manchuan Valley more than 20 times. Even every grain of sand and dust under the ground was clearly explored. Unfortunately, she still could not find any trace of Ji Tianxing, not even a trace of his aura. Her heart gradually sank to the bottom of the valley, and her eyes were full of solemnity and pain. There is no trace of him in the flowing river valley. Either he has already left the flowing river valley, or he has already died in the explosion and turned to ashes. Lu Baishuang whispered in a low voice, her tone full of pain. Although she really wanted the answer to be the former. But reason told her that the answer was most likely the latter. In order to capture the flowing river valley and win, Ji Tianqing unfortunately fell into the trap of the demon Saint Master and fought a fierce battle with him. In the end, Ji Tianqing sacrificed himself, killing or seriously injuring the demon Saint Master, allowing the human army to win. Thinking of this, Lu Baishuang's heart ached. She stood silently for a moment before she suppressed the pessimistic thoughts in her mind and decided to search outside the flowing river valley. She turned and was about to leave when she was stunned by the scene in front of her. A black-haired young man in a white robe was standing 100 steps away, quietly looking at her. The white-robed young man was handsome and valiant, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and a mysterious and powerful aura exuded from his body. There were many cracks and holes in his white robe, and it was also stained with dark red blood. His black hair was scattered over his shoulders, and he looked a little disheveled. He had obviously just gone through a fierce battle and had not rested. When Lu Baishuang saw him, she could not help but tremble, and her eyes gradually widened, revealing a look of disbelief. Her pretty face was also full of joy, and all the worry and anxiety in her heart disappeared in an instant. Ji Tianqing, you're fine. Lu Baishuang's mood was a little excited, and she hurriedly stepped in front of Ji Tianqing, looking up and down at his injuries. Seeing that he was not seriously injured, and that his soul was very calm, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. When Ji Tianqing saw her reaction, he was touched. When this Lu Baishuang saw that I didn't return to the Heavenly Lion Pass with the army, he was worried and came to the flowing river valley to look for me. Looking at her reaction, I'm afraid she sigh. Ji Tianqing sighed in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He nodded to Lu Baishuang and said with a smile, "In the battle of the flowing river valley, our army won a great victory. Now there are only about 300,000 demons left, and they are defending Mount Fei Xiong. Once the news reached Mount Fei Xiong, the demons would definitely be terrified and would not dare to cause trouble again. They would quickly flee back to Mount Bei Ming. This battle has confirmed the victory of our army, and the crisis of the White Frost Empire has been resolved. But even so, you shouldn't be so emotional that you're crying, right?" Lu Baishuang was startled for a moment. She glanced at Ji Tianqing with a guilty conscience and quickly raised her sleeve to wipe away the mist in her eyes. "I'm crying tears of joy. I'm happy for the people of the Empire. We're finally going to win. After the demon army is expelled, the people can return to their homes and live in peace. In the past 2 years, tens of millions of people of the Empire have been slaughtered by the demons. Now, this emperor has finally avenged them." Lu Baishuang was a little surprised. Ji Tianqing had clearly guessed her thoughts, but he pretended not to know. She could only find an excuse to cover up this matter, so as to avoid embarrassment. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "I'll leave the matter of the flowing river valley to the 2 generals. Let's return to the Heavenly Lion Pass. The army has returned victorious, so they should be rewarded and rewarded. In addition, I have to lead the army to Mount Fei Xiong as soon as possible and annihilate the rest of the demon army." Lu Baishuang nodded and followed him back to the Heavenly Lion Pass. The 2 of them flew side by side, but they were both silent. After a while, Lu Baishuang could not hold back the doubts in her heart and asked, "Ji Tianqing, when you attacked the flowing river valley last night, did you encounter a demon saint expert?" Ji Tianqing did not hide it and answered truthfully, "The second demon saint, Song Yu, who led the demon army of millions, personally rushed to the flowing river valley. He hid from everyone and disguised himself as an ordinary general in the army camp. When I destroyed the camp and created chaos, he revealed his true face and attacked me." "The second demon Saint Song Yu?" Lu Baishuang was shocked, and her eyes revealed a look of shock. "Wasn't he at the border of the Scarlet Sun Empire, leading the 4 million demon army to attack the Scarlet Sun Empire? Why would he personally rush to the Heavenly Lion Pass to help, and hide the news?" Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile, and he said in a playful tone, "He rushed here in a hurry to kill me. After all, I'm the #1 enemy of the demon race. Lu Baishuang frowned doubtfully and glanced at him suspiciously. She obviously did not believe him. However, she did not comment on this matter. She continued to ask, "Since Song Yu came to assist in the battle to kill you, then how are you still alive?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "He wants to kill me? Too naive. I exchanged tens of thousands of blows with him, and in the end, I suffered light injuries while he escaped with serious injuries. After I settled the matter of the flowing river valley, I went to chase after him personally. Unfortunately, I did not manage to catch up with him, so I was delayed and did not return with the army." Lu Baishuang finally could not help but roll her eyes at him and said in a reproachful tone, "Can't you speak the truth? The second demon Saint Song Yu is a rank 7, martial saint expert, an old demon who has been famous for thousands of years. Even if I met him, I would only be defeated miserably and would not even have the qualifications to fight him to a draw. You dare to say that you only suffered light injuries and he escaped with serious injuries? How can I believe this? This is simply inconceivable." Ji Tianqing spread out his hands indifferently and said indifferently, "I am speaking the truth. If you don't believe me, forget it. Only a ghost would believe you." Lu Baishuang stared at him and said unhappily, "Anyway, you have never told me the truth." Unknowingly, her attitude towards Ji Tianqing had changed subtly, and she became closer to him. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "All right, then I will speak the truth. I exchanged a few hundred blows with Song Yu and he severely injured me. I was about to die. However, he accidentally detonated the domain and blew up the flowing river valley army camp, killing hundreds of thousands of demon race soldiers. I took the opportunity to escape. When he saw that I was handsome and mighty, a rare martial arts genius, he took pity on me and decided to let me live." Before he finished speaking, Lu Baishuang stared at him angrily and shouted, "Ji Tianqing, can you be more serious? Are you talking about the heavenly book? Or are you trying to fool a 3-year-old child?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You see, you don't believe me when I speak the truth and you don't believe me when I lie. What else can I do?" Chapter 2095. Lu Baishuang could not believe that Ji Tianqing could severely injure Song Yu, a rank 7 martial sage. This was absolutely impossible. However, she did not believe that Song Yu would show mercy and spare Ji Tianqing's life. On the way back to Sky Lion Pass, she had been thinking and analyzing this matter. She was in a dilemma. Ji Tianqing pretended not to see her expression and silently thought about his next plan. After returning to Sky Lion Pass, Ji Tianqing rested in the Commander-in-Chief Palace for 2 days. 2 days later, he had recovered to his peak state and led the 300,000 elite troops out. This time, he wanted to destroy the 300,000-strong demon race troops at Flying Bear Mountain and achieve complete victory. However, when he reached Flying Bear Mountain, he realized that the demon race troops had already retreated. On the magnificent Mount Furious Bears, the only things left were the dilapidated walls and the burning fire that had never been extinguished. It was obvious that the demon race troops had already retreated. Before they escaped, they moved away all the military equipment and resources and even burned down the buildings in the camp. Even if they were defeated and escaped, they were not willing to let the human race take advantage of them. Ji Tianqing executed a secret technique and found out that the demon race troops had escaped 2 days ago. Now that 2 days had passed, the 300,000-strong demon race troops had already left Sky Lion Pass. Even if Ji Tianqing led the troops to chase after them, he might not be able to catch up. Even if he caught up, it would be half a month later, and they would have left Luoshui Holy Kingdom's territory. Ji Tianqing pounced on empty air, and was naturally a little depressed in his heart. However, this result was within his expectations and there was nothing to be angry about. He took a tour around the Flying Bear Mountain, then returned to the Sky Lion Pass with 300,000 elite soldiers. After returning to Sky Lion Pass, He let the soldiers rest in their barracks and entered the commander-in-chief palace alone to look for Lu Baishuang. Lu Baishuang was in the study room. She sat in front of the table and was deep in thought. Ji Tianxing came in front of her and shouted softly, "Lu Baishuang, I have something to tell you." Lu Baishuang's thoughts were interrupted, and she hurriedly raised her head to look at him. "You are back so quickly? It seems that the army of demons in the Flying Bear Mountain has already fled?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "You guessed right. This is also expected." Lu Baishuang nodded slightly, stared at him, and asked in a low voice, "You came to find me now, is it to tell me that you are leaving?" Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. "That's right, you're really smart." Lu Baishuang was praised, but he wasn't happy at all. With a desolate expression, he said, "How could I not guess? Long ago, you told me that you came to Heavenly Lion Pass to expel the demon army. You said that you were pressed for time and couldn't afford to waste any time." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "That's right, expelling the devil army and saving the north of the Luo River God country is my mission. Now that the mission has been completed, of course I have to leave. The Heavenly Lion Pass is already safe. Next, you just need to send the army to continue extending northward, and you will be able to reclaim the lost land. Even if you encounter some remnants of the devil race, you can easily deal with them. The people of the White Frost Empire will no longer have to live in fear and be forced to leave their homes. However, the other empires are still fighting with the devil army, and they are still in an abyss of suffering. I have to rush over to help as soon as possible to avoid more casualties." Lu Baishuang listened quietly, and when he finished, he slowly got up and bowed to him. "Ji Tianxing, on behalf of the 3 billion people of the White Frost Empire, this emperor sincerely thanks you. No matter when, the White Frost Empire will always open its doors to you, and we will always welcome your arrival." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "Many thanks for Holy Emperor Baishuang's kindness. This Ji will take his leave now, and we will meet again someday." He cupped his fists to Lu Baishuang and turned to leave. Lu Baishuang was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help but shout, "Wait!" Ji Tianxing turned to look at her, raised his eyebrows and asked, "What's wrong? Is there anything else?" "You." Lu Baishuang hesitated for a moment, then gathered her courage and asked, "If you leave now, I don't know when we will meet again. Don't you have anything you want to say to me?" Ji Tianxing thought seriously for a moment and said solemnly, "No." Lu Baishuang's expression suddenly stiffened, and her eyes flashed with deep disappointment. However, she immediately recovered and said with a smile, "You are still not serious. Forget it, you can leave now. This emperor will report the matter of you helping the Heavenly Lion Pass to Luotian Mountain and Lord Divine Master in detail, and ask Lord Divine Master to reward you according to your merits." "Many thanks." Ji Tianxing cupped his fists to her, then turned and left the study. This time, Lu Baishuang didn't stop him. She stood at the door of the study in a daze, watching Ji Tianxing's figure disappear at the end of the corridor. After a long time, she sighed faintly, turned around and returned to the study with a lonely expression, and continued to bury herself in official business. When he came to the Heavenly Lion Pass, Ji Tianxing came alone, and he didn't make a sound. When he left the Heavenly Lion Pass, he was also alone, and didn't attract anyone's attention. After he left the Heavenly Lion Pass, he stepped on the clouds and flew towards the east. The east of the White Frost Empire was close to the Changlong Empire. The situation of the Changlong Empire was worse than that of the White Frost Empire. More than half of its territory had already been invaded by the Devil Race. Since the Devil Race army invaded the Luotian Kingdom, more than 200 million people of the Changlong Empire had already died in the flames of war. More than 1 billion people were forced to flee their homes, and became homeless refugees. Fortunately, the surrounding empires had provided the Changlong Empire with corresponding help under the request of Luotian Mountain. If not for this, the Changlong Empire would have been unable to hold on until now, and would have collapsed long ago. Ji Tianxing's next target was the Changlong Empire. While he was flying, he calculated silently in his heart, now the Devil Race army has already killed their way to the center of the Changlong Empire. The battle line is hundreds of thousands of miles long, and there are more than 20 checkpoints in between. However, there are only 2 checkpoints that are the most important, and they are the gateways to the thousands of cities in the south. Once those 2 checkpoints are broken, the Devil Race army will be able to lead the army south and invade the entire Changlong Empire. According to the previous intelligence, there are more than 2 million soldiers stationed in the Celestial Approach Pass and the Long Mountain Canyon respectively, and they have been desperately resisting the Devil Race's attack. Since the Celestial Approach Pass is closer to me, I will go there first to take a look. After making up his mind, Ji Tianxing slightly adjusted his flying direction and rushed towards the Celestial Approach Pass. He flew continuously for 8 days and nights before he entered the Changlong Empire. He only reached the vicinity of the Celestial Approach Pass on the evening of the 12th day. When he was still a few hundred miles away, he could already see the Celestial Approach Pass that had existed since ancient times, and he could feel the majestic aura. Under the setting sun, the sky was filled with gray clouds, but it was dyed with a faint layer of blood. Chapter 2096. Ji Tianxing was the god of death who had killed his way through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. He was very sensitive to the smell of blood. Seeing the sky dyed red with blood and smelling the thick scent of blood, he realized that something was wrong. He sped up and flew towards the immortal Linxian Pass. Soon, he saw the sky in front of him lit up with colorful rays of spiritual energy. There were also low rumbling noises that spread out wave after wave. Hurricanes started to blow between heaven and earth. Those were the shock waves from the battle. The trees on the mountains were all blown away. I didn't think that I would come at the right time. The demon army is attacking the immortal Linxian Pass. Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow. His eyes flashed with cold, murderous intent. After 20 breaths, he was 100 miles away from the immortal Linxian Pass. He stopped in the sky. He looked down from the sky and immediately saw the situation at the immortal Linxian Pass. The famous immortal Linxian Pass was a giant mountain that was 10,000 meters tall. It was majestic and boundless. On the south side of the giant mountain was a rolling mountain range. The mountain was covered with dark green primitive forest. On the north side of the giant mountain was a vast plain. There were no mountains, forests, or lakes. This giant mountain existed 10,000 years ago and gave birth to many myths and legends. Standing at the peak of the immortal Linxian Pass, one could reach out and touch the stars in the sky. Every full moon night, the bright moonlight would shine on the mountain peak. It made one feel pure and holy. But now the immortal Linxian Pass had become a battlefield. It was a land of blood. On the mountain peak there was an open space with a radius of 100 miles. There were many palaces and courtyards built there. There was also a giant military camp. On the mountain range behind the giant mountain, there were tens of thousands of buildings lined up in a row. They formed a military camp that was 300 miles long. There were more than 2 million human soldiers from different empires. They were stationed in this military camp. At this moment, on the north side of the giant mountain, there were hundreds of thousands of demon soldiers. They were like a black sea rushing towards the immortal Linxian Pass. There were about 600,000 demons. They were divided into 6 armies and arranged in different formations. They were attacking the immortal Linxian Pass fiercely. All kinds of powerful demonic path secret techniques, dazzling blood-red light, and soul fire poured down crazily on the battlefield. Countless mountain-like, ferocious-looking demonic beasts let out deafening roars and fiercely charged at the formation of human warriors. About 500,000 human soldiers formed a defensive formation outside the Celestial Arrival Pass, resisting with all their might. Every minute, every second, countless human warriors were killed, falling into puddles of blood without even having a complete body. Cries of agony rang out incessantly. Streaks of bright red blood splattered, causing a hazy blood mist to accumulate above the battlefield. Ji Tianqing's gaze left the battlefield and gradually moved upwards. Soon, he saw thousands of demon clan and human clan generals fighting each other in the sky above the battlefield. There were more than 20 blood gods' illusions hiding in the clouds, devouring blood qi and souls to strengthen themselves. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing no longer hesitated. His figure flashed and rushed to the battlefield. Shua! He teleported 30 miles away and appeared behind a blood god's illusion. This blood god's illusion was very cunning. Its body turned into a wisp of dark red blood mist, flying in the sky without attracting too much attention. It was absorbing the blood qi from all directions and merging it into its body. Suddenly, a dazzling holy white light came from behind it. That holy white light condensed into a giant sword that was 30 feet long, erupting with an invincible and destructive power. The blood god's illusion felt the power of the holy white light and was instantly filled with fear and fear. It quickly teleported away. However, it was only at the 3rd level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. How could it escape from Ji Tianqing's attack? Shua! With a flash, the white light giant sword slashed the blood god's illusion's body. It was cut in half on the spot, turning into 2 dark red blood mists. Before it could counterattack or escape, the holy white light spread out and immediately enveloped the 2 halves of its body. Under the purification of the holy white light, the dark red blood mist quickly dissipated like snow melting. In just 3 breaths, this blood god's illusion was completely purified by the holy white light and disappeared completely. Until the moment it disappeared, it still didn't understand what was going on, let alone who killed it. Ji Tianqing killed a blood god's illusion in one move and didn't stop to kill another blood god's illusion. He used the same trick again. While the blood god's illusion was unprepared, he waved his hand and released a dazzling white light. Shua! After a few breaths, this blood god's illusion was also purified by the white light and completely disappeared. Next, Ji Tianqing's figure kept flashing in the sky, killing one blood god's illusion after another. Most of the blood god's illusions were devouring the blood qi and souls on the battlefield. However, there were also a few blood god's illusions that quietly released plagues and poisons, causing all kinds of disasters. Their lethality was very shocking. The plagues and poisons released could poison thousands of soldiers in an instant. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing got rid of these blood god's illusions in time to prevent the disaster from spreading further. 15 minutes later, he killed 21 blood god's illusions. The 5 surviving blood god's illusions all discovered his existence and saw his terrifying means. The 5 blood god's illusions didn't dare to stay any longer. They hurriedly fled to the north, away from the battlefield. Ji Tianqing was just about to chase after them when he was stopped by 9 demon race powerhouses. These 9 demon race powerhouses were all in the 2nd or 3rd level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm and led 20,000 to 30,000 demon race warriors. They were powerful, and their auras were ferocious. Without saying a word, they used their secret techniques to surround and attack Ji Tianqing. Shua shua! Suddenly, the sky was covered with the brilliance of spells. All kinds of ferocious and terrifying phantoms of demon race secret techniques covered the sky within a 5-kilometer radius. Such a huge commotion also alarmed the human generals in the sky. More than 20 human generals discovered Ji Tianqing's presence. Although he was wearing a white robe, he didn't wear armor like the generals. However, the 20 or so human generals all looked worried and rushed over to save him. Unfortunately, everyone was rather far away and was simply unable to save Ji Tianqing in time. Ji Tianqing was about to be drowned by the brilliance of spells and blasted into pieces on the spot. However, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded appeared. Even though he was in a dangerous situation, he calmly took out a black sword and waved it calmly, sending out dozens of sword lights. Star shatter. 49 silver sword lights bloomed like lotuses, illuminating the sky within a 100-kilometer radius. No matter how powerful the demon race's secret techniques were, how ferocious the blood lights and demon soul phantoms were, they all collapsed and dissipated after meeting the starry sword lights. The dazzling starry sword lights actually defeated all the attack. Not only that. Chapter 2097. The sword light was like lightning, and silver lotuses bloomed. 9 Tribulation Realm demon generals were killed in one move, dying without a complete corpse. As for Ji Tianqing, he was unscathed. His white robe and hair were still spotless. More than 20 human generals rushed over, but they were stunned by the scene in front of them. Their eyes widened in horror, revealing expressions of disbelief. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed it. That handsome and valiant white-robed youth was clearly so young, but he was able to kill 9 demon generals in one move. What kind of amazing strength was this? Was he a top martial lord? Or was he an extraordinary martial saint expert? No one knew the answer. The generals also did not recognize this unfamiliar white-robed youth. Just as everyone was stunned, the white-robed youth attacked again. His feet moved in a mysterious way, and his body flashed in the sky with a series of afterimages. Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, 7 silver-white sparks bloomed in the sky within a 50-kilometer radius. They were as gorgeous as 7 stars in a row. At the same time, the bodies of the 7 demon generals exploded, turning into a rain of dark purple flesh and blood, burning into ashes in the sparks. The 7 demon generals were scattered in different places, several kilometers away from each other. However, Ji Tianqing was too fast, and his swordsmanship was too amazing. He killed all of them in the blink of an eye. In the eyes of many human generals, the 7 demon generals were killed at the same time. Everyone was so shocked that their hearts stopped beating. They looked at Ji Tianqing in amazement, shocked. Oh my God! This general, no, who is this senior? We have never seen him before. He should not be a general of our army. Maybe he is a strong reinforcement that Marshal Xie invited. What a terrifying movement technique, what an amazing swordsmanship. Today is really an eye-opener. I am sure that this senior is definitely a martial saint expert. That decisive and unparalleled swordsmanship is not inferior to Marshal Xie's. For a moment, hundreds of human generals in the sky stared at Ji Tianqing's figure, exclaiming and discussing. However, Ji Tianqing turned a deaf ear to them. His figure continued to flicker in the sky, killing demon generals one after another. He executed the heavenly dragon's 7 steps and held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand. He executed an extraordinarily profound sword technique, and there was actually no one who was a match for him. No one could stop it, and even gods and ghosts would flee. In the eyes of many human soldiers, there were only countless afterimages of Ji Tianqing and the silver sword light that filled the sky. Swish, swish. In the short span of 100 breaths, Ji Tianqing had actually killed over 150 devil generals in succession. The battlefield was immediately thrown into chaos. The remaining 1,000 devil race generals were all frightened into retreating, not daring to get close to Ji Tianqing. The morale of the human generals was greatly boosted, and they took the opportunity to attack the demon generals, forcing them to retreat again and again. When Ji Tianqing saw that the battle in the sky was stabilizing, he looked down at the battlefield below. Seeing the demon race army surging forward with murderous intent, and the human race army constantly retreating, he hurriedly stepped in to help. Heavenly Dragon Palm. With a wave of his left palm, an overwhelming golden light shot out, forming a 1,000-feet-long golden dragon. Roar. The heavenly dragon let out a dragon roar that shook the clouds, and with the power to destroy heaven and earth, it swooped down toward the battlefield. Boom! The next moment, an earth-shattering explosion erupted, shaking a radius of hundreds of miles. A 30-mile gap was blasted open in the demon race army's formation on the spot. On the grassland that was sprinkled with corpses and blood, a huge pit was blasted open, and dust flew up into the sky. At least 20,000 devil race soldiers were killed on the spot by the heavenly dragon palm, turning into dust and scattering on the battlefield. Meteor fire shower. Ji Tianqing shouted with a grave expression, and his aura erupted to the extreme as he brazenly used his ultimate killing move. He formed a sword seal with his left hand and waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, and a soaring golden flame ignited behind him. Immediately, nearly 100 silver light spots lit up in the dusky sky and blasted down like meteors. Following the meteor from outer space was an overwhelming surge of heavenly fire. Inside and outside the immortal Overlook Pass, it was instantly lit up by the stars and flames, and the heaven and earth were filled with radiance. The hundreds of thousands of humans and demons were so shocked that their expressions changed drastically, and they could not open their eyes because of the blinding light. Countless soldiers looked up at the sky instinctively. What they saw was a human youth in a white robe, with long hair and a mysterious black sword in his hand. He stood proudly in the sky, as majestic and sacred as a god, and so powerful that it made people respect him. The meteors and heavenly fire that fell from the sky were like the servants of a god, following his summons. Rumble! In the next moment, hundreds of meteors that were as large as mountains crashed into the demon race's camp. Next, the overwhelming heavenly fire covered a radius of nearly 100 miles, drowning more than 200,000 devil race soldiers. The grassland outside the immortal Overlook Pass was instantly turned into a sea of fire, and smoke and dust covered the sky. The deafening sound was as if the heaven and earth were falling apart, and the sun and moon were collapsing, causing everyone to feel dizzy. The ground within a radius of a few hundred miles was trembling violently as spiderweb-like cracks appeared all over the ground. Even the 10,000-meter-tall, majestic immortal Overlook Pass was shaking violently from the impact. Such a destructive scene made the hundreds of thousands of soldiers tremble in fear. While everyone was running and avoiding the shockwaves, the only thing that appeared in their minds was the majestic figure in the white robe. Many of them had the same thought. Who was that young man in the white robe? Was he a human or a god? How could he control the meteors and create such a horrifying natural disaster? After a long while, the smoke and flames that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The battlefield became clear, and the hundreds of thousands of soldiers could finally see the situation clearly. They saw that on the vast grassland there were hundreds of huge craters, and they were scattered on the ground within a radius of 200 miles. This huge crater had been burned black by the heavenly fire, and it had completely turned into a charred ruin. At the bottom of the crater, there were remnants of dark red lava, and wisps of flames were floating around. At least 200,000 soldiers of the demon race army had been burned to ashes and disappeared. The ground around the crater was covered with a thick layer of dust, and it was also charred black. The formation of the demon race army was broken, and they were split into several groups, scattered and defeated. More importantly, after such a destructive attack, countless soldiers of the demon race were traumatized, and their morale was at an all-time low. When the soldiers of the human race saw this, they were all shocked, and they found it unbelievable. At the same time, the soldiers' morale was greatly boosted, and they charged even more bravely. Ji Tianqing appeared again. He flew above the demon race army, and once again waved his hand and used his ultimate technique. Lightning Attraction Technique. He formed a spell with both hands, and gathered the power of lightning within a 10,000-mile radius. He condensed it into hundreds of lightning bolts and struck the demon race army. Kaboom! Boom boom boom! Deafening thunders exploded one after another, shaking the heavens. Chapter 2098. Every bolt of lightning had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Over 100 bolts of lightning struck down at the same time. Even an ordinary martial sage would be turned into charcoal. Most of the demon soldiers on the battlefield were only in the heavenly origin realm and the spirit tempering realm. Under the heavenly lightning, they were like ants that could only be turned into ashes. The thunderous roar lasted for dozens of breaths before it dissipated. The land that was already in ruins became even more chaotic after being struck by over 100 bolts of lightning. Within a radius of 300 miles, there were deep pits and scorched earth. Countless ashes and fragments of weapons and armors were scattered on the ground. Another 100,000 demon soldiers were killed on the spot by the heavenly lightning and disappeared without a trace. The 300,000 survivors of the demon clan were completely terrified. They lost their fighting spirit and will to fight. With Ji Tianqing, the god of death, who could destroy the heavens and the earth, no one dared to muster up any courage. They only wanted to escape from the immortal face pass as soon as possible. There was a commotion in the demon army. Countless people fled outside the immortal face pass in panic. Hundreds of thousands of human soldiers were shocked to see such a drastic change and the scorched earth outside the immortal face pass. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ji Tianqing. They were full of admiration and respect. All sorts of cheers, shouts, and discussions erupted like a mountain torrent, filling the sky. Our race is mighty. Our race will win. This is unbelievable. That senior can summon the heavenly lightning and kill 100,000 demon soldiers. This is the power of a god. Even our commander Xie can't control the heavenly lightning, right? Who is that senior? Our commander Xie is so powerful. He can invite such a powerful senior to help us. Victory will be ours. Such an unfathomable senior is so young and handsome. This is unbelievable. Senior alone can kill 1,000,000 lions and kill 1,000,000 demon soldiers. Senior's demeanor is unparalleled. He is like a god of war. If I can have 1/10,000th of him, it will be enough to make a name for myself in the army. Countless soldiers were full of admiration and respect for Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not say a word, continuing to pursue the fleeing demon army with his sword. The 9 swords of the burial of heaven, the heavenly dragon palm technique, and various other secret techniques were displayed one by him. Incomparably sharp sword lights, dazzling magical power splendor, and earth-shattering lightning and starry divine fire constantly poured into the demon army. He pursued them for hundreds of miles and killed tens of thousands of devil soldiers. The human generals also hurriedly gave orders. They led hundreds of thousands of soldiers out of the celestial Overlook Pass and chased after the demon soldiers. 4 hours later, the battle finally ended. The fleeing devil race army was also completely wiped out. Only a few thousand people managed to escape with their lives. In this battle, the human race had won a complete victory. It was an incomparably beautiful victory. When hundreds of thousands of human warriors returned in triumph, cheers and shouts were heard from both inside and outside the celestial Overlook Pass. Everyone was jubilant and proud of this perfect victory. However, all the soldiers knew that the greatest contributor to this victory was the mysterious white-robed youth. He alone had killed 300,000 devil soldiers. It could be said that his battle achievements were splendid and shocking to the extreme. After the battle ended, the soldiers were still unwilling to retreat and rest. They were still discussing this matter. The generals who led the army did not have time to reward the soldiers. They hurriedly flew into the sky and greeted the white-robed youth. They saw the white-robed youth standing in the sky with a proud expression. He seemed to be observing and thinking about something. The few generals went up to greet him respectfully and humbly bowed to him. "Senior, I Wei Yu, pay my respects to you. I, Yi Xianqing, represent the 100,000 soldiers under my command to thank you for your help. I, Ban Yunshan, represent the 100,000 soldiers in the vanguard camp to thank you for your help. I, General." The 5 generals had different facial features. There was a burly middle-aged man, a thin white-haired elder, and a handsome young man. However, They were all in the third or fourth level of the tribulation realm and led 100,000 soldiers. In the celestial approach pass, they only obeyed the orders and orders of Xie Wusheng. They only respected Xie Wusheng. However, after the battle just now, the 5 generals worshipped Ji Tianxing and were in awe of him. Ji Tianxing looked at the 5 generals calmly and said, "Generals, you don't have to be so courteous. It is my responsibility and mission to kill the devil and protect the territory of the holy nation." The 5 generals were still discussing Ji Tianxing's identity and background. They even argued about it. Some people thought that Ji Tianxing was a strong helper invited by Xie Wusheng. He was most likely a friend of Xie Wusheng. Some people thought that he was an expert in the martial arts world. He was most likely an expert who lived in seclusion. He was just passing by and decided to help. Some people thought that he must be a martial sage expert sent by the holy nation. He was most likely a trusted subordinate of the divine master. Hearing his words, the 5 generals were certain of his identity. He must be an expert sent by the divine master. His goal was to support the celestial approach pass and kill the devil. Wei Yu cupped his hands at Ji Tianxing and asked respectfully, "Senior, you have shown your prowess today and killed more than 300,000 devils. You have made a great contribution. I think our general, Xie Wusheng, would like to thank you in person. It's just that we still don't know Senior's name, so we'd like to ask." Ji Tianxing saw their curious faces and was ready to tell them the truth. However, he remembered what happened at the Heavenly Lion Pass and decided to keep it a secret. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he said expressionlessly, "You don't have to ask. Just bring me to see your general." The 5 generals understood and guessed that he had a secret mission and could not reveal it easily. Therefore, the 5 of them cupped their hands at the same time and said, "If that is the case, we have been rude. Please follow us." Then, the 5 generals surrounded Ji Tianxing and flew into the Celestial Approach Pass. In the Celestial Approach Pass, hundreds of thousands of soldiers were still discussing the previous battle. They were talking excitedly. Seeing Ji Tianxing and the 5 generals flying across the sky, countless people had looks of reverence on their faces as they bowed to greet them. Soon, the 5 generals brought Ji Tianxing to the peak of the Celestial Approach Pass and landed in front of the most glorious and solemn general's palace. The door of the conference hall was wide open. On both sides of the stairs outside the door, there were 2 rows of silver-armored guards. Ji Tianxing was the first to cross the stairs and enter the meeting hall. In the spacious and bright conference hall, there were several golden-armored generals reporting to the white-haired elder at the head of the table. The white-haired elder was thin and tall. He wore a black and white Taoist robe and a white jade crown on his head. He looked extremely sage-like. Without a doubt, he was the general of the Celestial Approach Pass, Xie Wusheng. When he raised his head to look at the entrance of the conference hall and saw Ji Tianxing's face clearly, his body suddenly shook as if he was petrified. His eyes widened and he was stunned for a long time before he came back to his senses. He stood up excitedly and appeared in front of Ji Tianxing in a flash. He stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief, and tears welled up in his eyes. Master? Is it really you?" Xie Wusheng's lips trembled as he asked in a low and stuttering voice. The generals and guards were dumbfounded when they saw Xie Wusheng's excited reaction and heard what he said. Everyone in the hall revealed shocked and astonished expressions as they looked at Ji Tianxing with a face full of doubt. Chapter 2099. The spacious and bright meeting hall fell into silence. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Not only were the 10 generals and a dozen guards stunned, even Ji Tianxing was a little stunned. He frowned and looked at Marshal Saint Xie, who was 5 steps away from him. He stared at his face, entranced. It was a face that was slightly old, but not withered. Perhaps it was due to his cultivation, or perhaps it was because he was a martial saint, but his face was still rosy and his complexion was excellent. On his slightly thin face, There was a pair of narrow but deep eyes, which contained the vicissitudes of life and extraordinary wisdom. Under the high bridge of his nose was a pair of thin lips. He had a wisp of white beard that hung down to his chest. When Ji Tianqing first saw this old face, he felt that it was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. When he carefully looked at it twice, a similar face immediately appeared in his mind. Of course, that face of about 20 years old was Marshal Saint Cye's appearance when he was young. Following that, a memory from 1,000 years ago appeared in Ji Tianqing's mind. That year, Ji Tianqing sat at Tianzhu Mountain and challenged all the martial saints in the world. He won every battle and became famous. Countless ambitious youths rushed to Tianzhu Mountain to learn martial art. The disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains were all hard-working and ambitious young geniuses. Only a skinny and dark-skinned kid was an anomaly among the disciples. This person was like a skinny monkey, and his eyes were abnormally bright. He always had a sloppy appearance, not caring about his appearance. He often had a messy hairstyle and carried a set of jade chess to play chess with his fellow disciples. However, his chess skills were incomparably exquisite, and none of the disciples of Tianzhu Mountain were his match. He did not focus on practicing martial arts and swordsmanship, but did not do his job all day. Naturally, Kenshin was displeased, and Huanglong Daoist reminded and taught him many times. Unfortunately, he was still stubborn, and in the end, he angered Huanglong Daoist, who wanted to expel him from the sect. It was late at night in the pouring rain, and he knelt outside Kenshin's study for an entire night. In the end, Kenshin sympathized with his stubbornness, and summoned him to an audience to listen to his story. It turned out that his obsession with chess was related to the massacre of his family. He carried a blood feud and came to Tianzhu Mountain to learn martial arts, wanting to become an expert and avenge his family. Thus, the God of Swords studied his ancient chess book and personally taught him. From then on, he walked on the right path, and his strength increased by leaps and bounds. 300 years later, he successfully broke through the martial sage realm and became the renowned chess saint. He was the disciple of Tianzhu Mountain and the current chess saint Xie Wudao. The memories gradually disappeared, and the young face in Ji Tianqing's mind gradually overlapped with the martial saint Xie in front of him. He finally understood Xie. I did not expect Xie Wudao. Back then, this kid was as dark and skinny as a monkey. He was the ugliest among his fellow disciples. 1,000 years later, he has become so benevolent and sage-like. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, and was about to shout, Xie Wudao. However, just as he spoke, he stopped abruptly. Ji Tianqing glanced at the generals and guards around him, and quickly changed his words. He said coldly, Martial Sage Xie, you have the wrong person. Martial Sage Xie stared at him, still immersed in his excitement and joy, and did not react. No, Master, even though I have not seen your face for 1,000 years, I will always remember it in my heart, and imprint it in my spiritual soul. I will never forget it. Even though you have been through 1,000 years, your appearance, gaze, figure, and aura have not changed. Master, your disciple, Xie Wudao, kowtows. Xie Wudao said sincerely, and was about to kneel down and bow. He was very sure that the white-robed youth in front of him was his master, Kenshin. Regardless of appearance, gaze, or soul aura, there was no difference. However, Ji Tianqing stretched out his hands and held his arms like iron hoops, preventing him from kneeling. Martial Sage Xie, please calm down. I am Ji Tianqing, and I am here on the orders of the Divine Master. I have something important to discuss with you. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly, and his tone was very serious. It was as if he really did not know him. Xie Wudao looked at him in astonishment. Then, he slowly straightened his body and suppressed the excitement in his heart. After 10 breaths, Xie Wudao finally calmed down and returned to his calm and indifferent attitude. He glanced at the generals and guards around him, and said in a dignified tone, "All of you can leave now. Ben Shuai has something important to discuss with Master Ji. No one is allowed to disturb us." Only then did the 10 generals and the many guards come back to their senses. They looked at Ji Tianxing and Xie Wudao with strange expressions, and quickly bowed and left. However, they had all witnessed the situation. After leaving the meeting hall, they began to discuss secretly. "Oh my God! What happened to Marshal Xie? Why did he suddenly lose his composure? Marshal Xie has always been calm and wise. Why did he react so violently? Did you hear that? Marshal Xie called that person master, and even wanted to bow to him." "Marshal Xie's master? I heard that Marshal Xie came from Tianzhu Mountain, and is Kenshin's direct disciple. Doesn't that mean that young master surnamed Ji is the legendary sword god? That's ridiculous. Kenshin fell 1,000 years ago. How could he appear again? But Marshal Xie is such a wise man. How could he mistake his master for someone else? And Marshal Xie also said that Master Ji's appearance, eyes, and soul aura are exactly the same. That's too unbelievable. Could it be that reincarnated people really exist in this world? Is Master Ji really Kenshin's reincarnation? Maybe Kenshin didn't fall at all. After all, no one saw him die with their own eyes. It's just a rumor. If it's really Kenshin's reincarnation, then it's a story that will shock the world. No wonder Master Ji is as powerful as a deity. He killed more than 300,000 demons alone. Other than Kenshin, who else could have such a demeanor? The 10 generals and dozens of guards gathered in 2s and 3s to discuss this matter. Everyone guessed that Ji Tianxing was Kenshin, or Kenshin's reincarnation. They were both shocked and excited. They hurried back to the barracks and told the others about this matter. After all, this was a story that had never happened before. Only Ji Tianxing and Xie Wudao were left in the meeting hall. They immediately fell silent. Xie Wudao calmed down. He also felt that this matter was strange. His attitude towards Ji Tianxing was also much calmer. "Master Ji, Ben Shuai was rude just now. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Ben Shuai has heard of Master Ji's reputation and deeds a long time ago. You are the #1 God's disciple of Luo Shui Kingdom, the #1 genius of the human race. Also, Ben Shuai has heard about how you helped the Heavenly Lion pass and defeated the demons." Chapter 2100. Ji Tianxing sat upright on a pearwood chair, listening with a calm expression. After Xie Wudao finished speaking, he asked in a low voice, "Xie Wudao, do you really see Kenshin as your master and respect him your whole life?" Xie Wudao was stunned for a moment. His face was full of doubt as he looked at him. "Young Master Ji, what do you mean? A master for a day is a father for life. My master treated me like a nephew. Not only did he take me in, but he also taught me martial arts and chess. If not for my master's guidance, I would not have been able to take revenge and achieve what I have today. I carry the mark of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and am a disciple of Kenshin. This will not change in my life." Xie Wudao frowned. His tone was a little angry, but at the same time, it was resolute and unquestionable. Ji Tianxing was not angry. His expression did not change. He looked at Xie Wudao calmly and asked, "Since you see your master as your father, why did you leave the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and set up your own sect?" Xie Wudao was stunned. He pursed his lips with a complicated expression. He was hesitating about how to explain when he suddenly realized something. He looked at Ji Tianxing with dignity and asked, "Young Master Ji, as far as Ben Shuai knows, you are the eldest disciple of Luotian Mountain and the most valued disciple of the God Master. You have also contributed a lot to the God Nation. Ben Shuai respects you and is grateful that you came to the Immortal Pass to help. However, the matter of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and Ben Shuai's master seems to have nothing to do with you. Why do you ask?" Ji Tianxing smiled and asked, "How can it have nothing to do with me? Didn't you hear the news that I am a disciple of Kenshin? 2 years ago, I returned to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and managed the affairs of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains with the Huanglong Taoists. What? Xie Wudao's face was filled with shock. He stood up and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. You are Master's disciple? No. This is impossible. Even if you are Master's successor, you shouldn't have the same appearance and temperament as Master. Furthermore, your eyes and soul aura are exactly the same as Master's. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and calmly explained, "That's right, it's because I inherited Kenshin's martial arts legacy. Didn't the Huanglong Taoist mention this to you?" This. Xie Wudao fell silent again. After a moment of hesitation, he said bitterly, "Senior Huanglong and I have not contacted each other for many years." Ji Tianqing looked at him with burning eyes. "Why don't you contact her?" Xie Wudao shook his head and revealed a bitter smile. "Junior brother Ji, don't ask me about this. I have my own difficulties. However, I dare to swear to the heavens that I absolutely did not betray Master, nor did I do anything to let down the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Whether it is Master or Senior Brother Huanglong, I will always be loyal to them. If there is any danger to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, as long as Senior Brother Huanglong says the word, I will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation." Ji Tianqing calmly looked at him for a long time before nodding slightly. "All right, I will not ask any more questions. I am willing to believe your words. However, you should still call me young Master Ji." Xie Wudao was startled and asked in confusion, "We are all Master's disciples, and you are the youngest successor. You should be our junior brother, why? There is no reason, just call me young Master Ji." Ji Tianqing said firmly. Xie Wudao looked at him with a complicated expression. He felt bitter in his heart and thought, could it be that junior brother Ji knows about what happened back then and blames me? No, senior brother Huanglong is definitely not that kind of person. He would not take the initiative to say that. Ji Tianqing saw his strange expression and warned, "From today onwards, don't mention my true identity to anyone, and don't involve the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and Kenshin. Just say that I am the eldest disciple of the Luotian Mountain and that I am here to support the army under the orders of the Divine Master to fight against the devil race." Xie Wudao did not hesitate and quickly nodded. "All right, I will definitely keep this matter a secret for you." Ji Tianqing was still a little worried and said, "Just now you lost your composure in front of everyone. Those generals and guards will definitely misunderstand and have some complicated conjectures. So, you have to think of a way to make them keep it a secret and not spread the news." Xie Wudao immediately agreed and said solemnly, "Master Ji. Young Master Ji, please don't worry. This old man will definitely do as you say." Ji Tianqing then changed the topic and said seriously, "All right, we have finished talking about private matters. Let's talk about business. You are now the Commander-in-Chief of the Celestial Face Pass, and you are in charge of 3 million soldiers. I am here to help you fight, and I only want to defeat the Devil Race army as soon as possible. What do you plan to do with me?" When it came to military achievements and merits, Xie Wudao became spirited and said with a burning gaze, "Young Master Ji, just now you displayed your invincible might outside the pass. You single-handedly defeated the Devil Race army and killed more than 300,000 Devil Race soldiers. This old man has already heard the report from the generals. Such a world-shaking battle record was simply world-shaking. This old man still felt that it was inconceivable, but now I know that you are actually Master's successor. No wonder you have such a peerless demeanor. Also, the Heavenly Lion Pass's army was able to defeat the Devil Race army within a month, because of your help. Your valiant military achievements and legendary deeds have already spread throughout the northern battlefield. Not only are the people of the White Frost Empire grateful and worshipping you, even the people of the Changlong Empire and the Scarlet Sun Empire are full of admiration for you. They only hope that you can save them as soon as possible. Ji Tianxing quietly listened. After Xie Wudao finished speaking, he asked, So? Xie Wudao's face was full of smiles. He said in a playful tone, This old man has decided to invite you to be the deputy commander of the army and assist this old man in battle. You and this old man are from the same sect, and your military achievements have spread throughout the world. You should be appointed as the deputy commander, and it won't be a waste of your talent. In the future, the strategy and plan to deal with the Devil Race army will be based on your opinion. This old man will fully support you. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, That's good too. Then arrange a place for me to stay and announce the news of my appointment. In addition, arrange the map of the battlefield inside and outside the Celestial Overlook Pass, as well as the information about the Devil Race's military strength and defense, and give it to me. Xie Wudao repeatedly nodded and said, Rest assured, young Master Ji. This old man will immediately send someone to do it. Ji Tianxing didn't say anything else. He stood up and walked to the door of the conference hall. Then, Xie Wudao's personal guard came in and led Ji Tianxing into the commander's palace to arrange a place for him to stay. This middle-aged guard also had the strength of the second stage of Tribulation Realm. He was actually Xie Wudao's disciple. The place was spacious and bright, and the decorations were elegant and clean. There was also a secret room and a reception hall, which was exactly what Ji Tianxing wanted. After resting in the place, Ji Tianxing entered the secret room alone and prepared to cultivate. At this moment, the voice of the Burial of Heaven sounded in his mind. Among your many disciples, only a few were the most outstanding and the most loyal. Chapter 2101. Ji Tianxing had already guessed that Burial of Heaven would ask such a question. He raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, Do you think that I don't trust Xie Wudao and am testing him on purpose? It's obvious that you have already tested him, Burial of Heaven replied calmly. Ji Tianxing looked ahead with a complicated expression. When I was at Tianzhu Mountain, I mentioned Xiao Bai and Xie Wudao to Huang Long. Huang Long avoided talking about Xie Wudao and only talked about Little White for a while. From then on, I guessed that there might be some misunderstanding between Huang Long and Xie Wudao. Burial of Heaven said faintly, So you questioned Xie Wudao in person just now? Ji Tianxing nodded and said, Yes, I'd like to know what happened between them. Unfortunately, Xie Wudao did not say anything, so I did not ask. However, Xie Wudao might have his own difficulties. As long as he did not change his mind about me and Tianzhu Mountain, it's fine. Burial of Heaven continued, Since you've already confirmed that Xie Wudao did not betray us, why didn't he tell you the truth? Your attitude towards him and towards Huang Long are clearly two different things. Ji Tianxing nodded. Of course there is a difference. When news of my death spreads, Shenwu continent will definitely be in a perilous situation. I have offended so many powers and powerhouses in the past, and they will definitely take revenge on Tianzhu Mountain. For thousands of years, Tianzhu Mountain has always been in danger and predicament. No matter how loyal a disciple is, it is impossible for them to protect their former glory and faith and accompany Tianzhu Mountain to its destruction. Many disciples have gone their separate ways and established their own factions. This is human nature, and I do not blame them. Now that I see Xie Wudao again, I will not blame him either. However, Huang Long has always been at Tianzhu Mountain and has protected it for thousands of years. He is my most loyal disciple, and I naturally trust him the most. After pausing for a moment, Ji Tianxing continued, Currently, only Yao Yao, Kuku, and Huang Long know my true identity, and they will keep their mouths shut. At present, my strength is still not strong enough, so it's not good for me to reveal my identity. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles. Burial of Heaven agreed and nodded. That's right. There are countless people who want to kill you. Aside from the demon race, there are also many martial Dao forces and martial saint experts. Ji Tianqing said calmly. Xie Wudao lost his composure in front of everyone in the hall just now, which has already aroused everyone's suspicion and speculation. I could only hide my identity and let Xie Wudao block the news. If I reveal my identity to him, no matter how he disguises himself, he will be exposed in front of everyone. Once the news of Kenshin's rebirth spreads throughout the continent, I'm afraid we'll have no choice but to continue living in exile. I'm not sure how many people want to kill me, and how many will help me. Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then said in a serious tone, "That's good. Before you recover your divine realm, it's best to keep it a secret. Now that Xie Wudao treats you as his junior brother, he will take good care of you. You'll have one more helper." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "It doesn't matter whether I help or not. Now, I'm going to help him guard the Celestial Overlook Pass and expel the demon race army." Burial of Heaven thought for a moment and asked, "You've just arrived at the Celestial Overlook Pass, and you're not preparing to fight. Instead, you're cultivating in the secret room. Could it be that your strength has reached a critical point and you're about to break through to the Martial Saint realm?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's right. I have a feeling that I'll be able to break through within a month. Only when I return to the Martial Saint realm can I display the true Sword Way lost skill and be qualified to roam the continent." Burial of Heaven reminded him, "That's right. Only when you return to the Martial Saint realm can you be truly reborn. At that time, you'll be able to do more things, such as the illusory spirit star nucleus under the Broken Soul Cliff. Also, the wreckage of the divine battleship under the Ghost Desert in the North Underworld Mountain." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You're only thinking about the illusory spirit star nucleus and the wreckage of the divine battleship. You want me to get them as soon as possible and help you restore to a divine artifact. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. When I reach the Martial Saint realm, I'll definitely make a trip there." Burial of Heaven did not say anything more and said, "Then, go into seclusion and cultivate. We'll talk about this later." After that, Burial of Heaven fell into a deep sleep. Ji Tianqing also began to cultivate. Xie Wudao was very efficient. That night, he personally delivered the information that Ji Tianqing wanted. Ji Tianqing spent half the night reading all the information. He also had a sufficient understanding of the situation inside and outside the Celestial Overlook Pass and the military strength of the demon race army. Then, he could rest assured and cultivate. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. In these 5 days, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret room to break through the bottleneck of the Martial Saint realm. Xie Wudao did not disturb him, nor did he take the initiative to attack the demon race. He still trained the army as usual and spied on the demon race's intelligence. In addition, he also gathered a few generals and more than 10 guards who were present that day. He instructed everyone to keep it a secret and not to leak any information. However, after what happened that day, the generals and guards leaked the news. The news had already spread in the Celestial Overlook Pass, and at least a few 100,000 people knew about it. Moreover, the news had already spread out of the Celestial Overlook Pass, and within the Kingdom of Gods. When Xie Wudao knew that the news had been leaked, he was furious and scolded the generals and guards. However, what was done could not be undone, and he could not do anything. Even if he killed the generals and guards, it would not help. He could only issue a strict order to forbid the soldiers in the Celestial Overlook Pass from discussing and spreading the news. Once they were discovered or reported, they would be severely punished. On the morning of the 6th day, Ji Tianqing finally came out of seclusion. He had just returned to his room when Xie Wudao heard the news and rushed over. Xie Wudao bowed to him and said in a serious tone, "Young Master Ji, regarding your appointment as the deputy commander, this old man has already announced the news. Moreover, this old man has also instructed more than 20 generals under my command to strictly carry out your orders. Previously, you displayed your invincible prowess outside the Overlook Pass and killed more than 300,000 demon race, which has already intimidated all the soldiers. When the soldiers knew that you were appointed as the deputy commander, they were very excited and expectant. They are waiting for you to lead them to victory. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Since you have already arranged everything, then I am relieved. The soldiers have rested for a few days and now it is time for them to go out of the Overlook Pass and achieve their goals. Xie Wudao, go gather 300,000 elite soldiers. I will lead them to attack the Black Wind Valley." Xie Wudao was about to nod in agreement when he suddenly reacted and his expression changed. "Ah, young Master Ji, this old man did not hear wrongly, right? You want to attack the Black Wind Valley? That is the only barrier and line of defense in the wilderness outside the Overlook Pass. The demon race has stationed more than 400,000 soldiers in the Black Wind Valley and set up an inescapable ambush. There is also an indestructible defensive array. You want to attack the Black Wind Valley? I am afraid that no general will dare to accept your order." Chapter 2102. Xie Wudao's reaction was completely within Ji Tianqing's expectations. He listened to Xie Wudao calmly and said, "Lu Baishuang had the same reaction as you when I led my troops to the Sky Lion Pass for the first time." Xie Wudao was stunned for a moment. He looked ashamed and said awkwardly, "Young Master Ji, I was rude. You have led troops into battle 8 times in the Heavenly Lion Pass, and you have achieved complete victory in all of them, without a single defeat. This news has spread throughout the northern battlefield. Your achievements and legends are all over the kingdom of gods. Of course, I believe in you. But I can't explain it to the soldiers." Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "You are the commander-in-chief of the Linxian Pass. Your words are orders. Military orders are like mountains. Why do you need to explain this?" Xie Wudao was in a dilemma. He hesitated for a moment and explained, "But I am not a marshal or general of the kingdom of gods. I am only a leader of the martial arts community. That is why I was appointed as the commander-in-chief of the Linxian Pass. My status and my words are not enough." Disappointment flashed across Ji Tianqing's eyes. His expression was indifferent as he said, "Since that's the case, gather all the generals and head to the conference hall for a discussion. I will personally speak to them." Xie Wudao was embarrassed. He quickly bowed and apologized, "Young Master Ji, I am really sorry. But your prestige is quite high. I believe the generals will listen to your orders." After that, Xie Wudao ordered the guards to gather the 26 generals for a meeting. He personally brought Ji Tianqing to the conference hall. Half an hour later, in the conference hall, Xie Wudao sat on the main seat with a serious and dignified face. Ji Tianqing stood in the conference hall with his back facing the door. He closed his eyes and rested. The 26 generals stepped into the conference hall one after another and stood in 2 rows. Everyone guessed that the commander-in-chief Xie Wudao must have some plan and was about to send out the troop. Everyone was full of anticipation and rubbed their palms together. However, when they saw Ji Tianqing, their expressions were a little strange. They secretly talked to each other through telepathy. "Hey, is this the trusted Vice Commander Ji? How can he be so young? I didn't believe you when you said that Deputy Commander Ji was very young. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, it's truly incredible. Have you heard about the previous incident? If that information is true, then this Lord Ji's status is the pinnacle of the continent, far surpassing the 3 divine masters." "Shut up. This is a big secret. Marshal Xie strictly ordered that no one is allowed to talk about it. Commander Xie summoned us for a meeting. Deputy Commander Ji is also present. It seems that Deputy Commander Ji is going to lead the troop." "Ha ha ha, if Deputy Commander Ji personally leads the army, I'll be the first to ask for permission to go to war. Of course, Vice Marshal Ji can stop 1,000,000 troops by himself. If we follow him into battle, we will definitely be invincible. Not long after, all 26 generals arrive. Xie Wudao said solemnly, "Since all the generals are here, Ben Shuai would like to make an announcement." Previously, Ben Shuai had announced that Lord Ji Tianxing, who was sent by Luotian Mountain, would be the deputy commander of Linxian Pass to assist Ben Shuai in resisting the devil race. Ben Shuai and Deputy Commander Ji spent a few days to seriously study the situation and the deployment of troops. Finally, they came up with a plan. Today, Deputy Commander Ji will personally lead the troops into battle. Hearing his words, the eyes of all 26 generals lit up. They were filled with excitement and anticipation. Everyone's eyes were gathered on Ji Tianxing. Everyone cupped their hands and bowed to him. They volunteered and shouted, "Marshal Ji, this general has witnessed Marshal Ji's peerless demeanor with my own eyes. I'm already convinced by you and am willing to follow you into battle. This general greets Marshal Ji. I'm willing to be the vanguard general for Marshal Ji and sweep away all obstacles. Marshal Ji, this general admires you the most. Please, you must lead this general into battle." Everyone spoke enthusiastically, requesting to follow Ji Tianxing into battle and make a name for themselves. However, Ji Tianxing's expression was calm. He looked around indifferently and said, "You don't even know where you are going to battle, yet you're volunteering so bravely. I'm afraid that once you know Ben Shuai's target, you'll be afraid of the slightest thing and keep your mouth shut, right?" All the generals were stunned, their faces filled with confusion. Some of the more straightforward generals hurriedly asked, "Marshal Ji, where do you plan to attack with 300,000 soldiers?" "Marshal Ji, as long as you personally lead the troops, no matter where you attack, even if you have to climb a mountain of blades or plunge into a sea of flames, this general will follow." Ji Tianxing smiled in a noncommittal manner. His tone was low and dignified as he enunciated each word clearly, "I will attack Black Wind Valley today." Upon hearing this news, the 20-some generals all paled and cried out in alarm. What? Black Wind Valley? Heavens! That's the front line of the demon race, the most impregnable line of defense. Did we hear wrongly? Marshal Ji really wants to attack Black Wind Valley? Black Wind Valley is impregnable and has more than 400,000 demon race guards, but Marshal Ji is only taking 300,000 soldiers to attack. Sigh, isn't Marshal Ji's decision a little rash? The generals whispered to each other, unable to accept this order for a moment. Ji Tianxing could not help but reveal a disdainful sneer when he saw that no one dared to step forward to accept the order despite the endless discussion. Ha ha! Ben Shuai was right. Those who volunteered just now can't wait to shrink their heads back into their stomachs now. The generals were all very embarrassed. All of them revealed looks of shame and indignation, but they could not refute. Xie Wudao was also worried when he saw this scene. He sighed inwardly. He had long expected this outcome, but there was nothing he could do about it. Ji Tianxing no longer humiliated the generals. He said solemnly, "Ben Shuai only needs 3 generals to follow him, and 300,000 elite soldiers will be deployed. Those who follow Ben Shuai on the expedition will receive double the rewards after returning victorious. Of course, if you are afraid of death and are unwilling to go on the expedition, that's fine too. If this marshal were to attack Black Wind Valley alone, I would still be able to annihilate the devil army. However, when Ben Shuai conquers Black Wind Valley, he will leave the Celestial Overlook Pass to assist other battlefield. Ben Shuai disdains to be associated with people who are afraid of death." After saying that, Ji Tianxing swung his sleeves and strode towards the entrance of the main hall. Xie Wudao and more than 20 generals were shocked by his confidence and domineering aura. They were all dumbfounded and stood rooted to the ground. After a while, the crowd regained their senses and exclaimed in surprise, "Are you sure? Marshal Ji wants to attack Black Wind Valley alone? This is crazy. Marshal Ji's confidence and domineering aura are unparalleled and shocking. Marshal Ji is right. He dares to attack Black Wind Valley alone, but we are timid and afraid of death. What a disgrace! I don't care. Even if I die on the battlefield, I will follow Marshal G and go crazy for once. Yes, Marshal G is not afraid of death. What are we afraid of? Chapter 2103. Ji Tianqing had just walked out of the meeting hall when a shout came from behind him. General Ji, please wait. He looked back and saw that 4 generals had followed him out. He stopped and looked at the 4 generals without saying a word. The 4 of them came before him and bowed respectfully. They said sincerely, General Ji, we are willing to follow you into battle. We will not regret it until we die. General Ji, we are willing to go to the battlefield with you. We will live and die together. General Ji, please grant us our wish. General Ji, please grant us our wish. We are willing to die for you. Ji Tianqing glanced at the 4 generals. They were all the generals who had stopped the demon army outside the Celestial Advent Pass. At the same time, the 4 of them had witnessed the process of him killing more than 300,000 demon army. He raised his eyebrows and said calmly, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tuahai, and more than 20 other generals are hesitating. Why did you come along? You know that Ben Shuai is going to attack the Black Wind Valley. Are you not afraid of death? Wei Yu, who was the leader, smiled calmly and said firmly, General Ji, the 4 of us are ordinary people. Of course, we cherish our lives and are afraid of death. But we know that as generals of the Empire, we have the responsibility and obligation to protect the Empire's territory and defend the people against the demon army. So what if we are afraid of death? In the end, we can't lose our responsibility and integrity. Dying on the battlefield is the final destination for us. Moreover, with the wise General Ji leading us, we are willing to entrust our lives to General Ji. Ji Tianqing looked at Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and Tuahai and asked, Do you think so too? It's not too late to regret now. Ben Shuai will not blame you. The 3 generals shook their heads quickly and said firmly, General Ji, you don't have to test us anymore. We will follow General Ji to death. Seeing that their attitude was firm and unwavering, Ji Tianqing smiled with satisfaction. Very good. 10 days later, you will feel lucky and proud of your decision today. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were all stunned. They did not understand what he meant. However, Ji Tianqing did not explain. He waved his hand and ordered, What are you waiting for? Go and gather your men. Ben Shuai is about to set out. The 4 generals hurriedly cupped their hands in salute and said, Yes, sir, in unison. Then, they turned around and strode away. Inside the meeting hall, over 20 generals looked at the backs of Wei Yu and the others as they left. They all revealed complicated expressions as they discussed secretly. Some people were filled with worry and anxiety, while others secretly felt regret and blamed themselves for their own hesitation and misgivings. There were also a few generals who had a vague premonition that they seemed to have missed the opportunity to soar and make a name for themselves in the world. Because of this, they felt extremely regretful. In a short 10 hours, Ji Tianqing led 400,000 elite soldiers and arrived at the Black Wind Valley outside the pass. The Black Wind Valley was located on a vast plain, more than 2,000 miles away from the Immortal Lin Pass. This was a valley that was more than 10,000 miles long. On both sides were undulating mountain ranges and mounds. The surface was covered with brown soil and sand. Black fog lingered in the valley. It was filled with poisonous miasma and demonic fog. All kinds of strange howls could be heard constantly. It was as frightening as the abyss of hell. Every time the north attacked, a pitch-black gust of wind would blow out from the valley. It carried a strange and vicious poison and permeated the entire wilderness. Every time this happened, the Immortal Lin Pass more than 2,000 miles away would activate its defensive array. Thousands of array masters would join forces to activate various arrays to defend against the poisonous gas in the black wind. The 400,000 soldiers arrived near the Black Wind Valley and stopped. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other three were clustered around Ji Tianqing. They looked at the Black Wind Valley in front of them and revealed a fearful expression. General Ji, you just said that you would gather the troops to attack. However, you haven't told us what your plan is? That's right, General Ji. The Black Wind Valley is easy to defend and difficult to attack. If we attack rashly, we will definitely suffer heavy casualties. Do you have a good plan? Everyone, don't worry. General Ji is so confident. He must have a good plan long ago. Ji Tianqing glanced at the four of them and said calmly, What good plan? To deal with the remaining demons, we only need to fight them head-on. There is no need for schemes. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were stunned. Their expressions became extremely strange. Are you kidding? General Ji, you must be joking? General Ji, you must not underestimate the enemy. The Black Wind Valley is heavily guarded. There are also many powerful blood gods. Even if a martial sage enters, he will most likely die. Ji Tianqing did not say much. He took out 8 talismans from his space ring and gave them to Wei Yu and the other 3. Each of them received 2 talismans. One was 5-colored and the other was as white as snow. They both contained shocking energy waves. The 4 generals were puzzled. They looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, General Ji, what talismans are these? Ji Tianqing said calmly, These are talismans that Ben Shuai refined himself. The 5-colored one is the Heavenly Thunder Talisman and the white one is the Holy Light Talisman. Keep them well. Later, Ben Shuai will sneak into the Black Wind Valley alone and assassinate the generals and blood gods in the valley. When the Black Wind Valley is in chaos and the defensive formations and fortifications are destroyed, Ben Shuai will send you a signal. At that time, you will use these 2 talismans to blast open the defensive formations and lead the soldiers into the Black Wind Valley. You will be able to obtain a complete victory. Ji Tianqing said seriously and his tone was very certain. When the 4 generals heard this, their expressions changed drastically. They hurriedly tried to dissuade him. General Ji, although you're powerful, you shouldn't put yourself in danger. It is too dangerous for you to sneak into the Black Wind Valley alone. This general is willing to accompany you. Ji Tianqing waved his hand disapprovingly and said calmly, Other than the Devil Saint experts, no one can hurt Ben Shuai. Half a month ago, the last Devil Saint of the Devil race was also crippled by Ben Shuai. Now, no one can stop Ben Shuai's footsteps. The 4 generals were shocked. The more they thought about his words, the more they felt that it was inconceivable. Ban Yunshan hesitated for a moment and asked worriedly, General Ji, can these 2 Heavenly Thunder Talismans and Holy Light Talismans really blast open the defensive formations of the Black Wind Valley? Ha! Ji Tianqing only chuckled and did not answer. When his voice fell, his figure disappeared and flew towards the Black Wind Valley. The 4 generals looked at each other and hurriedly put away the 2 talismans. They led their soldiers and dispersed to carry out their mission. Half an hour later, the 4 generals each led 100,000 elite soldiers and laid in ambush around the Black Wind Valley. At this moment, the Black Wind Valley that was shrouded in black fog suddenly lit up with flames that soared into the sky. Dazzling silver starlight and heavenly thunder and lightning covered the sky. There was also a series of loud rumbling noises that reverberated in the wasteland. Chapter 2104. The originally peaceful Black Wind Valley was now in chaos. Dazzling magical power light constantly lit up in the valley, and deafening loud noises were heard. All kinds of heavenly fire, astral wind, heavenly thunder and star-divine fire poured down in the valley, creating destructive power that could destroy the world. Countless demon experts and blood gods flew to the sky above the valley, searching for traces of strong enemies. All kinds of screams, angry roars and curses gathered into a sound wave torrent that reverberated in the sky. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were lying in ambush outside the Black Wind Valley, hundreds of miles away. No one could see the situation in the valley clearly, and they did not know what was going on. But looking at the earth-shattering momentum, everyone could guess that the battle in the Black Wind Valley must be very intense. Marshal G is indeed a god. He barged into the Black Wind Valley alone and created such a terrifying commotion. He barged into the demon nest alone and assassinated the generals and experts of the demon race amidst more than 400,000 demon race troops. Such strength and courage is rare in the world. Although Marshal G is in a dangerous situation, we cannot act rashly before he sends out the signal. As long as there is still movement in the Black Wind Valley, it means that Marshal G is still safe. If the movement stops, we must rush in to rescue Marshal G no matter what. I have a feeling that Marshal G can destroy half of the Black Wind Valley alone. When he sends out the signal, we will lead our troops in to clean up the mess. The 4 generals were calculating, and their hearts were filled with worry and anxiety. They only hoped that Ji Tianxing would quickly send out the signal. However, the fighting in the Black Wind Valley continued for an entire hour and did not stop. The 4 generals were burning with anxiety and wanted to rush into the Black Wind Valley several times. But they forced themselves to remain calm and continued to wait. Finally, a bright golden light lit up in the Black Wind Valley. Whoosh! That dazzling golden light pierced through the layers of black fog and demon chi and rushed into the sky like fireworks before exploding. Swoosh! A golden dragon shadow as huge as a mountain appeared. It stretched out its 5 claws and displayed a divine and majestic aura. Seeing the golden dragon shadow appear, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were overjoyed and hurriedly gave orders. Marshal G has finally sent out the signal. Quick! Attack! Everyone attack! Kill! Kill your way into Black Wind Valley and kill all the remaining demons. Leave none alive. Following the orders of the 4 generals, the 400,000 soldiers let out an earth-shattering roar as they waved their weapons and rushed toward the Black Wind Valley like a tide. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and Tuo Hai were the first to rush into Black Wind Valley. A huge black fog barrier blocked their path. This was the defensive array of Black Wind Valley. The 4 of them obeyed Ji Tianxing's instructions and hurriedly took out the Heavenly Thunder Talisman and the Holy Light Talisman. They injected their mana into the talisman to activate it and threw it at the black fog barrier. Shwa! The Heavenly Thunder God Talisman burned, erupting with an incomparably violent energy fluctuation. A 5-colored pillar of divine lightning appeared and crashed viciously toward the black mist barrier with the power to destroy everything. Boom! The 10,000-foot-long 5-colored divine lightning struck the black fog barrier with a deafening roar of thunder. A huge hole was blasted in the indestructible black fog barrier on the spot. Dozens of cracks spread out in all directions. Immediately after, the Holy Light Talisman also burned and lit up with a holy white light that covered the sky. The Holy White Light's aura was not violent. It even made everyone feel refreshed, gentle, and warm. However, when the gigantic blazing white light beam hit the black fog barrier, a surprising reaction occurred. Holy white light burst forth, and as long as it came into contact with the black fog and devil chi, it would be purified without a trace. After a few breaths, a 10,000-foot wide gap appeared on the black fog barrier and was still expanding. The gap was clear and the black fog and demonic chi that filled the valley had all disappeared. The 4 generals and all the soldiers were pleasantly surprised when they saw this miraculous scene. They revealed expressions of disbelief. Soon, everyone came back to their senses. The 4 generals took the lead and led the 100,000 soldiers under their command into the Black Wind Valley in a grandiose manner. Everyone originally thought that there would definitely be a fierce battle that would be very tragic. The demon race garrison in Black Wind Valley would definitely form a battle formation and charge forward dauntlessly to stop their invasion. However, when the soldiers charged into Black Wind Valley, they all revealed stunned expressions. The scene in front of them also shocked everyone. They saw that the vast and enormous Black Wind Valley was filled with dilapidated walls, collapsed houses, and palaces. The demon race's barracks were actually destroyed. Fire and smoke rose everywhere, and the ground was covered with cracks and holes. Countless demon race soldiers, either in groups of a few hundred or in groups of a few thousand, ran in panic in Black Wind Valley, constantly roaring in anger, despair, and fear. Seeing this scene, the human soldiers were dumbfounded and only felt that it was inconceivable. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other three were also confused. They all sent voice transmissions to inquire about the situation. What's going on? Even if the demon race's barracks were destroyed, they shouldn't be utterly defeated? It's too unbelievable. Is this still the cruel, bloodthirsty, and heartless demon race? Heavens! What did those demon race experience? How could they be destroyed to such a state? Everyone, look at the sky. It seems like Marshal Ji is being besieged. The 4 generals and many commanders raised their heads to look at the sky. They saw that in the depths of Black Wind Valley, about 100 miles away in the sky, there were more than 10 people fighting. At a glance, they were all demon race generals and blood god sons who were crazily besieging a white figure. Although they were very far away, everyone could recognize that the white figure was Ji Tianqing. His clothes were full of bloodstains. Thus Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other 3 decisively gave orders. All troops, listen to orders. Kill the demon race with all your might. Leave no one alive. Capture Black Wind Valley with the fastest speed and kill all the demon race. After the order was passed down, the 400,000 human soldiers immediately charged towards the demon race army under the leadership of many commanders. As for Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and Tua Hai, they held their weapons and flew into the sky. Swoosh! 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 After 10 breaths, the 4 generals flew into the sky and rushed into the battlefield. They did their best to rescue Ji Tianqing. They used all their strength to wield their swords and sabers, releasing powerful magic arts to kill the dozen or so Devil Clan experts. However, those demon race generals and blood god's sons were abnormally powerful. They fought for a long time and were not defeated. In the process, Ji Tianqing used thunderous means to kill 7 demon race generals and blood god sons. There were only 5 demon race experts left in the sky. They were all terrified and turned to flee in panic. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other 3 were greatly relieved. Only then did they rush to Ji Tianqing's side. Chapter 2105. Previously, the 4 generals had seen Ji Tianqing being surrounded by many demons and covered in blood. They had thought that he was heavily injured and had been very worried. Only now did they know that he was not injured and that his body was stained with the blood of demons. The 4 generals were greatly relieved after the false alarm. At the same time, they felt ashamed and self-deprecating. I saw Marshal Ji kill more than 300,000 demons with my own eyes. I've already seen his unparalleled power. Why am I still so worried today? Alas, our knowledge is still too shallow. It's our first time following Marshal Ji on an expedition, yet we're so nervous. In the eyes of all the soldiers, Marshal Ji is creating a miracle by leading troops to attack Black Wind Valley and sneaking in alone to assassinate people. But to Marshal Ji, this is all very common. Otherwise, how could he be so calm and collected? Just as the 4 generals were thinking, Ji Tianqing killed another 5 fleeing demon generals. Whoosh! He flew back to the 4 generals and asked with a dignified expression, "The battlefield is dangerous and you can lose your lives at any time. Why are you in a daze? Do you want to die?" Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others immediately came back to their senses and hurriedly bowed to apologize and explain. "Marshal Ji, please calm your anger. We have failed in our duty. We have witnessed Marshal Ji's power once again, and were impressed by Marshal Ji's style. We were deeply shocked and lost our composure on the battlefield. Marshal Ji, please calm your anger. We will immediately lead troops to encircle and eliminate the remaining demons." Ji Tianxing glanced at the four and said expressionlessly, "Stop flattering me. Ben Shuai doesn't buy it. Ben Shuai has already killed more than 100,000 soldiers in Black Wind Valley. Ben Shuai has also destroyed more than half of the defensive structures and formations. Ben Shuai has killed almost all the demon generals and blood gods above the Tribulation Realm. The remaining 300,000 demons are like headless flies. They are utterly defeated. The four of you are responsible for encircling and eliminating the remaining demons. You must end the battle in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, our soldiers will be infected by the demon chi and poisonous miasma if they stay for too long." Black Wind Valley was filled with devil chi and poisonous fog. Only experts above the Tribulation Realm could remain unaffected. If ordinary human soldiers were to stay in the poisonous fog and devil chi for a long time, their bodies would definitely rot and turn into blood, and they would die in pain. What was worse was that the disease was contagious. Once it spread in the barracks, it would cause a terrifying disaster. It was precisely because of this that Black Wind Valley could become a powerful defensive line for the demon army. When Ji Tianxing proposed to attack Black Wind Valley, the generals were hesitant and fearful. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other three hurriedly cupped their hands and bowed. Soon after, the four of them split up and commanded their soldiers to quickly encircle and annihilate the remaining demons. Ji Tianxing stood high up in the sky, surrounded by the poisonous fog and devil chi, and coldly stared at the valley. His divine sense spread out, enveloping a radius of 1,000 miles, monitoring every movement in the valley. At the same time, he crossed his hands and waved them, forming a mysterious incantation. He constantly shot out rays of sacred white light, scattering them in Black Wind Valley. The sacred white light scattered in the sky, and quickly expelled the poisonous fog and devil chi in the surroundings. In this way, the pressure on the human soldiers was greatly reduced. As time passed, the battle cries in Black Wind Valley gradually weakened, and the remaining demons became fewer and fewer. Ji Tianxing looked at the situation in the valley, and estimated that the battle would end in another hour. But at this moment, his divine sense suddenly detected a trace of a strange aura. In the depths of the valley, 400 miles away from him, there was a weak aura of magic power. It was taking advantage of the chaos to escape underground, fleeing into the distance. Ji Tianxing immediately raised his eyebrows, and flew away as fast as the aurora. He crossed the sky 15 miles with each step, and after 30 breaths, he arrived in the depths of the valley. The barracks in this area had long been reduced to ruins. Fires were burning everywhere, and black smoke billowed out. There were still 20,000 to 30,000 demons who were resisting stubbornly, resisting the encirclement of 80,000 human soldiers. The scene was very chaotic. Ji Tianxing ignored the two armies that were fighting. His divine sense probed into the depths of the ground, and quickly captured that aura. It was a black sword shadow, which was rapidly traveling underground, and was about to escape the range of Black Wind Valley. "Want to escape?" Ji Tianxing murmured indifferently. His body turned into a golden light, and he immediately chased after it. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, he burrowed into the ground, and chased after it with lightning speed. He had already mastered the 5 elements, and used the celestial chaos secret technique to merge with heaven and earth. Even if he was traveling underground with layers of rocks, it was as if he was walking on flat ground. His speed was unbelievably fast. In just 10 breaths, he had traveled 300 miles, and caught up with the Black Sword Shadow. The Black Sword Shadow also sensed his existence, and rushed out of the ground in a panic, and flew into the sky. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianxing also rushed out of the ground, and flew into the sky. One man, one sword, flew into the dusky sky at the same time, and appeared in the sky above the gray wasteland. This was the north of Black Wind Valley, and it was a few hundred miles away from Black Wind Valley. The Black Sword Shadow was very frightened, and it actually ignited with blazing white flames, and its speed increased by more than 3 times. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing was faster than it. Heaven capturing Dragon Claw. He let out a low roar, and with a wave of his hand, a huge golden dragon claw appeared, and grabbed the black sword Shadow. The black sword Shadow struggled with all its might, but it could not break free from the dragon claw's shackles, and was immediately caught by Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing took a closer look, and only then did he realize that the black sword Shadow was a half-meter-long black short sword. The short sword was a tribulation-grade magic treasure, and its shape was simple and strange, with a few array talismans carved on its surface. It was obvious that this was not a weapon of the demon race, but a magic treasure refined by humans. Most of the arrays on this sword focus on speed, and it's mainly used for flying? Ji Tianxing saw through the clues, and could not help but frown. He knew very well that the short sword could not fly on its own, and someone must be hiding in the sword to control it. Therefore, he released a violent magic power, and brutally broke the defensive array of the short sword. Then, his divine sense forced its way into the space inside the short sword, knocked out the person inside, and grabbed him out. Swoosh! A human male wearing a long black robe and a large cloak appeared in front of Ji Tianxing. This person was covered from head to toe, and his aura was very gloomy and cold. If one did not use their divine sense to check, no one would think that he was a human. Ji Tianxing held the short sword, lifted the large cloak, and saw an old, withered face. This human elder's body was withered, and his face was ugly, and his aura was as gloomy as a venomous snake's. Ji Tianxing sized him up, and released a wave of divine sense to wake him up. The old man gradually regained consciousness, and with a swoosh, he opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing with a malicious gaze, but he pursed his lips and did not say a word. Ji Tianxing stared at him with a sharp gaze, and said in a playful tone, "As a human martial monarch, you are on the same side as the demon race, and after being captured by me, you can still be so calm." Chapter 2106. The black-robed old man's reaction was originally very calm and indifferent. But when he heard Ji Tianxing's words, the corner of his eyes twitched, and a hint of fear flashed through his eyes. Obviously, Ji Tianxing relied on his powerful observation skills to determine so much information in an instant, which shocked him. The black-robed old man's change in expression naturally did not escape Ji Tianxing's eyes. He immediately revealed a playful sneer and asked again, "It seems that I guessed right. You do have a mission. With your strength at the 5th level of the Tribulation Passing Realm, you are a famous martial lord expert in the 3 divine kingdoms. Even in the demon army, you can be compared to the demon generals. However, I have never seen you make a move. You only wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. This means that you are not working for the demon race, and there are other forces behind you." The black-robed old man remained silent. He even closed his eyes and tried his best to maintain the calmness of his divine soul, not allowing Ji Tianxing to pry into the truth. Ji Tianxing carefully observed him and the short sword. After a while, he continued, "You did not speak because you did not want to expose your accent. You dressed as a demon because you did not want to expose the flaws of your clothing style, so that I could not find out your origin. But don't forget that the humans of the 3 divine kingdoms have slight differences in body shape, facial features, hair, and bones. If I'm not wrong, you must be from the Heaven-End divine kingdom." His tone was cold and firm, containing strong confidence. The black-robed old man, who had been as calm as ice, suddenly trembled when he heard his last sentence. He suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing with a malicious gaze. He grinned and sneered, "Ha ha!" As expected of the number 1 genius of the Luo Shui divine kingdom, the greatest threat to the demon race. Ji Tianxing, your confidence and arrogance are truly unimaginable. But unfortunately, you guessed wrong this time. The black-robed old man's voice was dry and hoarse, like 2 pieces of old bark rubbing against each other. It was very unpleasant to hear. At the same time, his accent clearly carried the flavor of the Luo Shui divine kingdom, as if he was from an empire on the eastern coast. "You're finally willing to speak?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Since you know who I am, you should know my methods." If he told the truth, he would suffer less physical pain. "Of course, don't tell me you're from the Luo Shui divine nation. This little trick is useless against me." The black-robed elder remained calm and sneered disdainfully. "People who walk in the shadows only believe in darkness and sharp blades. They disdain to belong to any divine kingdom." Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and looked at him deeply. He then lowered his head to look at the black dagger in his hand. Darkness and blades? He vaguely guessed that there was something strange about this short sword. However, the short sword had the black-robed old man's soul imprint, and only the black-robed old man could control the short sword. Or Ji Tianqing could kill the black-robed old man and wait for the soul imprint to dissipate before he could use this short sword. Ji Tianqing cast a spell with his left hand and was about to forcefully erase the soul imprint. The black-robed old man suddenly sneered, "Haha, if you forcefully erase the soul imprint, my soul will be damaged and I will lose my memory and become an idiot. At that time, you'll never know my identity or my secret. Anyway, I'm already in your hands and my life and death are in your hands. Why don't we make a deal? Spare my life and let me go. I'll tell you my origin and secrets." Ji Tianqing immediately stopped and looked coldly at the black-robed old man. "This is your only chance." After saying that, he handed the short sword to the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man took the short sword and said, as expected of Ji Tianqing, "You're wise and courageous. Unfortunately, you're too confident." Ha 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 ha. When he looked up and laughed crazily, Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong and immediately reached out to grab the short sword. However, it was too late. The mysterious black short sword had been detonated by the black-robed old man. Boom! With a deafening sound, the black dagger instantly shattered into pieces that filled the sky, bursting into a huge ball of black flames. The black flame had a strange attribute. It was an extremely rare dark flame. The pitch-black flames enveloped Ji Tianqing, and the violent impact sent him flying backwards on the spot. However, he was already prepared and used his powerful magic power to protect his body. He was not injured by the impact. Swoosh! He flew more than 10 miles before stopping in the sky. When the dark flame dissipated, he quickly flew back to his previous position. He saw that the black short sword had been shattered into countless pieces and scattered on the scorched earth. The black-robed old man was lying in a deep pit more than 10 miles away. Only half of his bloody body was left and his body was covered with a layer of dust. He lay motionless in the pit. His body was badly mutilated and he was no longer breathing. Ji Tianqing quickly flew to his side and used his divine sense to check. He found that the old man's soul had been shattered. The explosion of the short sword only injured his physical body. The shattering of his soul was because he had chosen to commit suicide. Ji Tianqing frowned and his face became as cold as ice. Damn it! How could there be such a crazy person who did not care about his life? This old man was a death warrior. He would rather die than reveal his identity. He even wanted to destroy the secret. Thinking of this, he suddenly thought of something. That's right. That short sword and the old man's soul were fused together. It was his natal magic weapon. Not only did he use the short sword to escape, there must be a secret in it. The short sword was destroyed by the explosion. However, the things in the space of the sword might not be completely destroyed. Therefore, Ji Tianqing quickly released his divine sense to cover the wasteland within 100 miles and carefully search the ruins. After a few minutes, he found more than 10 pieces of fragment. These fragments were of different sizes. The big ones were the size of a fingernail, and the small ones were only the size of a sesame seed. After careful inspection, Ji Tianxing found that 2 of them were fragments of the short sword and a few fragments of magic weapons. They were all useless. Only 2 fragments were valuable and attracted his attention. One of the dark brown metal fragments was the size of a fingernail. There were patterns engraved on the front and 2 incomplete seal characters on the north side. Ji Tianxing studied it for a while and recognized that it was the words Shadow and Blade. Shadow Blade? Could it be the name of a force? This metal fragment is from the identity token? Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while. He was not sure and checked the other fragment. This fragment was only the size of a sesame seed. It was a fragment of a jade slip used to transmit and record information. Under normal circumstances, after the jade slip is shattered, the information recorded in it will dissipate quickly. It will not dissipate immediately. There will be a process and a short period of time. This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. He quickly used his divine sense to explore the jade slip fragment. After a while, he read a message from the fragment. The plan has failed. The army has no leader. We must do something else. Chapter 2107. Ji Tianxing pondered with an indifferent expression. A golden flame surged out of his palm and burned the 2 fragments to ashes. He waved his hand, got up, and stepped into the sky, flying towards Black Wind Valley. Although there was only half a sentence left in the jade scroll, there was no beginning or end. But he combined all the information and gradually sorted out the situation. Originally, I thought that the demon army was so eager to attack the Luo Shui divine kingdom because of the return of the ancestor demon god. It needs slaughter and war to recover its strength as soon as possible. Now it seems that things are more complicated than I thought. There are actually human forces involved in this war and colluding with the demons. Those who can work with Dark North Mountain are either super martial forces like the Broken Sky Alliance or the 3 Divine Kingdoms. As for Ingren, I have never heard of this name. Unless he has the support of a super force behind him, then he has the right to add fuel to the fire. Although the appearance of the black-robed elder was just a small interlude, it did not have any impact on the Battle of Black Wind Valley. But through this, Ji Tianxing realized the complexity of the situation and buried a thorn in his heart. I have to be more careful in the future. Even if I expel the demon army, I can't let my guard down. Sooner or later, I will find out the force behind Ingren and see who is colluding with the demons. After a while, Ji Tianxing returned to Black Wind Valley. The battle was coming to an end. Only a few tens of thousands of demon soldiers were still stubbornly resisting, but they were quickly wiped out by the human army. The 4 generals ordered the soldiers to clean up the battlefield. They rushed to Ji Tianxing's side and excitedly reported the results of the battle. Reporting to General Ji, our army has achieved a complete victory in this battle. General Ji, we lost 60,000 soldiers, but killed more than 340,000 enemies and completely occupied Black Wind Valley. Ji Tianxing frowned and said calmly, "Wrong. We killed 450,000 enemies and completely wiped out the demons." Ban Yunshan was stunned and said with a puzzled face, "General Ji, that's not right. We only killed 340,000 demons, and you personally killed 110,000 demons. This is your military merit, we do not dare to claim it." Wei Yu and Yi Xianqing hurriedly nodded in agreement. "That's right. Commander Ji, you have the greatest merit. We accept this wholeheartedly. We will definitely report this to Commander Xie and the Saint Emperor." If Marshal Ji had not killed his way into the Black Wind Valley alone, how could we have achieved victory today? To tell you the truth, we've all picked up the merit with you. We're already ashamed to accept it, so how could we dare to think more? Ji Tianxing waved his hand and chuckled. "Don't talk nonsense. Does Ben Shui still need that bit of merit? The 4 of you are willing to risk your lives and follow Ben Shui to attack Black Wind Valley. This is an additional reward for you. Don't forget that Ben Shui said that the rewards will be doubled before we set off." Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were pleasantly surprised, but they were also ashamed and uneasy. Many thanks for Marshal G's grace, but this general's heart is uneasy. Marshal G, from now on we will follow your lead. We are willing to go through fire and water for you. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a dignified tone, "Don't decline anymore. This matter is settled. Return to the celestial overlook pass." With that, he took the lead and stepped into the sky. His clothes fluttered as he flew towards the south. The four generals arranged the aftermath, and quickly followed him back to the celestial overlook pass. After an hour, the news of the victory in Black Wind Valley spread throughout the celestial overlook pass. Not only Xie Wudao and the other 20 generals were shocked, but they also found it unbelievable. Even the 1,000,000 soldiers in the pass were shocked to the extreme. They found it hard to believe. When the 4 generals led the army back, the 1,000,000 soldiers had no choice but to accept this reality. In an instant, the entire celestial overlook pass was in an uproar. Everyone was immersed in shock and surprise as they discussed this matter excitedly. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and the rest, as well as the 300,000 soldiers who returned in triumph, did not hide the details of the battle. Everyone was filled with pride as they recounted the events of the battle to others. They praised Ji Tianqing as if he was a god who had descended from the heavens and was extremely powerful. Ji Tianqing's fame and achievements once again shocked the entire celestial overlook pass. More than 2,000,000 soldiers were filled with admiration and respect for him. One day later, Marshal Xie Wudao gathered all the generals and awarded them in front of the public square. All the soldiers who participated in the battle were rewarded with double the military merit. They were also praised by Xie Wudao in front of everyone. Not only did these people receive military honors, but they also received money. As such, the soldiers who participated in the battle became the focus of the entire scene. They were envied by the 2,000,000 soldiers. After the awards ceremony ended, Xie Wudao was busy with the aftermath of the battle. Of the soldiers who participated in the war, those who should be promoted were promoted, those who should be promoted were promoted, and those who should be compensated were compensated. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. Xie Wudao might not have much ability in the battle, but he was a rare expert in managing the overall situation and arranging the rear affairs. Ji Tianqing did not have the time to care about these matters. He left them all to Xie Wudao. He stayed in his residence to rest. At the same time, he studied the situation of the battle and the defensive arrangements and thought about his next move. Unknowingly, another day had passed. Xie Wudao had finished dealing with the rewards and compensation for the soldiers who participated in the battle. The bustling celestial overlook pass gradually calmed down. However, at this moment, an exciting news came from the marshal's palace. It ignited everyone's enthusiasm once again. Deputy Marshal Ji Tianqing announced that they would set off again in 2 days. This time, he would lead 500,000 soldiers. As for which stronghold or barracks they would attack, it was still a secret. When the 1,000,000 soldiers heard the news, they were so excited that they could not sleep. Their blood was burning. Countless soldiers rushed to the barracks of the commanders, requesting to participate in the battle and follow Ji Tianqing. The commanders were under pressure and could only rush to the general's residence overnight to ask for the soldiers' orders. However, when the commanders arrived at the general's residence, they found that the generals were long gone. It turned out that when the 20 over-generals heard the news, they all put down their work and rushed to the marshal's palace. In the marshal's palace, Ji Tianqing's bedroom was brightly lit. He sat in the study, brewing a cup of hot tea. He held a military book and read it quietly. Wei Yu stood by his side like a guard. His expression was respectful and strict. Outside the door of the sleeping chamber, more than 20 armored generals were gathered in groups of 3 to 5, discussing the matter of the expedition. They wanted to see Ji Tianqing and request to join the battle. However, the guards at the door stopped everyone and did not allow anyone to enter. The generals were noisy and discussed for a long time. However, Ji Tianxing did not appear. Half an hour later, in the middle of the night, only one person came to the gate. Everyone took a closer look and saw that it was General Wei Yu. Wei Yu looked at the anxious generals and said expressionlessly, "Marshal Ji is thinking about important military matters. Generals, please be quiet and do not make any noise." Chapter 2108. More than 20 generals had rushed over excitedly to see Ji Tianxing, but they were all blocked outside the door. After waiting for half an hour, he was already impatient and unable to wait any longer. Now that Wei Yu had finally appeared, he had reprimanded everyone and even wanted them to line up. The expressions of the generals immediately changed. They were rather dissatisfied and began to discuss secretly. "Damn it! Wei Yu is a general like us. Now that he has become Marshal Ji's confidant, he dares to reprimand us. Sigh. Who asked us to ask for help? Even if Marshal Ji and Wei Yu give us a hard time, we have to endure it. Previously, when Marshal Ji wanted to attack Black Wind Valley, we all dissuaded and opposed it. Only Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other two followed Marshal Ji to battle. If it was anyone else, they would treat Wei Yu as a trusted aide and would inevitably embarrass us." A general with a full beard said angrily, "Isn't this an obvious humiliation to us? I can't take this lying down. At most, I'll just return to the barracks and stay." Another middle-aged general quickly nodded in agreement and said with a smile, "Yes, yes, yes. How can you take this lying down? Quickly return to the barracks and rest." "Bah!" The bearded general glared at him and said, "Do you think I'm stupid? If I return to the barracks to rest, you will have the chance to follow Marshal Ji to battle. As long as you can follow Marshal Ji to battle, it's like picking up military merits with your eyes closed. Furthermore, it's double the reward. Only a fool wouldn't go. If Marshal Ji wants to humiliate me, then humiliate me with all your might. As long as I can participate in the battle, even if Marshal Ji slaps me in public, I'm willing." The bearded general's words were unpleasant, but none of the generals present laughed at him. It was because everyone had the same thoughts and ideas. As long as they could follow Ji Tianxing to battle, even if they had to kneel in public, it was fine. Kneeling to a godly person like Ji Tianxing was just a form of worship. It was not shameful. If they could follow him to battle, they would definitely have outstanding military merit. Who wouldn't be tempted by the rewards? Although the generals had some complaints and discussed secretly, they all waited patiently. However, they were all patient. They quietly lined up in a long line and waited patiently. When Wei Yu saw that everyone had lined up, he revealed a playful smile and turned to enter the sleeping chamber. A moment later, he returned to the study and stood beside Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing asked without raising his head. "Ben Shuai only said that he would only bring along those who are sincere. You actually humiliated them like this. Aren't you afraid of arousing public anger?" Wei Yu smiled and cupped his hands. "General Ji, it is not that I acted on my own, but this is the only way to verify who is more sincere. Furthermore, this general is speaking up for you. Previously, when you wanted to lead the army into battle, they all made all sorts of excuses and prevaricated, as if they were afraid of death. After the great victory in the Black Wind Valley, now that you want to go to war, they are all licking their faces and asking to fight. This is really despicable. You are magnanimous and did not argue with them. However, this general feels that it's not worth it for you. That's why I purposely left them hanging so that they can reflect on themselves." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Since you've already done so, let's do as you say." Wei Yu cupped his hands and bowed before taking his leave. Ji Tianxing read a book for half the night before returning to his room to meditate and cultivate. For the next 2 days, he did not show his face. He had been cultivating. As for the 20 or so generals, they had been waiting in line outside the gate. On the first day, the generals were resentful but could still wait patiently. However, on the second day, the news spread throughout the camp. causing the million soldiers to discuss animatedly. The generals felt that they had become a laughingstock and could not suppress their resentment and anger. One after another, some of them left. There were still a few generals who were indignant. They turned and ran to Xie Wudao to complain. There was no need to doubt the result. These generals did not please either side and were reprimanded by Xie Wudao. On the morning of the third day, it was time for Ji Tianqing to go to war. At this time, the 20 or so generals had basically all left. Only the last general was still standing outside the gate, waiting bitterly. He stood there for 2 days and 2 nights without moving a single step. Moreover, his eyes were closed and his expression was calm. No matter how angry the other generals were and how the soldiers in the camp mocked him behind his back, he turned a deaf ear. Finally, Ji Tianqing appeared when the first ray of light shone in the morning. He stepped out of the sleeping quarters with a refreshed expression and came to the gate. Looking at the figure at the gate, he said in a playful tone, "Ben Shuai thought that the generals could not bear the humiliation and had all left in anger. I did not expect that there would be a thick-skinned one who stayed. What is your name?" The middle-aged general in blue armor saluted with a solemn expression and said calmly, "This general, Xing Pingji, greets Marshal Ji." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Ben Shuai said that you were thick-skinned, but you are still able to take it with equanimity. It is rare to see such indifference. I think you must be someone with a story, but Ben Shuai is not interested in your story. Go gather the troops under your command and gather them outside the pass. Get ready to set out." Xing Pingji originally thought that Ji Tianqing would ask about his experience, but he did not expect that Ji Tianqing was not interested at all. Marshal Ji is indeed not an ordinary person. This general is impressed. This general will take his leave. After he bowed, he left in satisfaction and went to prepare the army for war. After he left, Wei Yu came to Ji Tianqing's side and said in a low voice, "Marshal Ji, this General Xing Pingji has never been very sociable. He is very dull and reserved. Among all the generals, he is the most inconspicuous." Without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and interrupted, "Ben Shuai is only a passer-by. He is only responsible for leading you to victory and driving away the demon army. As for the stories and experiences of the soldiers, Ben Shuai is not interested. In half a month, Ben Shuai will leave the Celestial Overlook Pass and head to the Qiyang Empire." Wei Yu was startled and showed a look of deep regret. But he felt relieved after thinking for a while. He quickly adjusted his mentality and prepared the troops for war. Half an hour later, the 500,000 soldiers gathered outside the Celestial Overlook Pass and set off valiantly. The 5 generals leading the troops were Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tuahai, and Xing Pingji, who had just joined. This time, Ji Tianqing's target was the west camp of the demon army. The west camp was at the edge of the wilderness and was thousands of miles away from the Celestial Overlook Pass. There were millions of soldiers stationed there, and the defense was extremely tight. After the soldiers set off, they found out that their target was actually the west camp. They were all shocked and worried. Using 500,000 soldiers to attack the millions of heavily guarded soldiers was undoubtedly like throwing an egg against a rock and seeking their own death. Fortunately, the leader was Ji Tianqing, the legendary killing god. If Xie Wudao was the leader, the soldiers would have been in an uproar and even collapsed and disbanded. This mission was unusual. Ji Tianqing also changed his strategy. He used the world in the Sword of Burial of Heaven to bring 5 generals and more than 20 commanders to infiltrate the west camp of the demon army. Chapter 2109. This was an unprecedented and almost suicidal war. An army of 500,000 lay in ambush outside the western camp, waiting for Ji Tianqing's order to attack. Ji Tianqing used the Sword of Burial of Heaven to bring 5 generals and 20-some commanders into the western camp. This camp was surrounded by mountains, and 300 li to the east was a vast plain. An army of more than 1,000,000 demons occupied a valley of 300 li in circumference. At a glance, one could see that the valley was densely packed with black stone houses and palaces. Countless minarets and watchtowers stood in the military camp. There were also many scouts in blood-red armor patrolling in the sky, monitoring the movements in the surroundings. The skull and blood banner in the camp fluttered in the wind, and the air was filled with thick demonic mist and black chi. A massive fortress of 300 li in circumference enveloped the entire valley, operating day and night. Ji Tianqing used a secret technique to pass through the Black Fortress and enter the camp. He was in no hurry to assassinate the demon generals. First, he hid in the shadows and observed the defensive array. He quickly thought of a way to break it and found several weak points. Then, he ordered the 5 generals in the sword world to prepare their talismans. In a little while, when he wreaked havoc in the camp, the 5 generals would use this chance to destroy the defensive array. In addition, the 20-some commanders would each have their own mission, to destroy the defensive fortifications and arrays in the camp. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing circled around the camp and made proper arrangements for the 5 generals and the 20 or so commanders. Everyone used invisibility talismans to hide their tracks and chi, hiding in different locations and nodes, waiting for the operation to begin. Ji Tianqing left alone, making his way to the center of the camp, preparing to assassinate the demon generals and experts. But just as he made his way to the center of the camp and prepared to infiltrate a massive palace, a horn sounded. At this moment, the sound of a horn came from the camp. A scout had sent out a warning signal. The entire demon camp was alarmed. Countless armored and sword-wielding scouts flew into the air, seething with killing intent, and began to search the area. On the ground, one demon army after another rapidly gathered and set off. In a short span of 100 breaths, 400,000 demons had split into 4 armies and arrived at the edges of the camp. They had all activated their defensive fortifications and formations, and were in a defensive posture, waiting for the enemy to come. The entire demon camp immediately entered a state of combat readiness, like a fully drawn bow, ready to explode with astounding power at any moment. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing immediately understood. The soldiers lying in ambush around the camp must have been discovered by the demon scouts, causing the demon army to be on guard. Damn it! The entire camp is on alert. Even if I create chaos, the army may not be able to charge in. Ji Tianqing murmured with a solemn expression. Worry flashed across his eyes. At the same time, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others who were hiding in the surroundings of the camp and waiting for an opportunity to destroy the grand formation were burning with anxiety and worry to the extreme. The situation was extremely dangerous. If they were not careful, the 500,000-strong army led by Ji Tianqing would be buried here. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment, then resolutely decided to carry out the original plan. He remained invisible and quietly entered the palace, searching for traces of the demon generals. In his opinion, the demon generals would definitely hold an emergency meeting when they learned that the human army outside the camp had been discovered. The facts proved that he had guessed correctly. When he sneaked into the second floor of the palace, he detected the auras of more than a dozen experts in a heavily guarded secret room. The secret room had a defensive array, and there were more than 20 elite guards around it. Ji Tianqing quietly crept to the door of the secret room to investigate the situation inside. He saw 16 Tribulation Transcendence Realm demon experts sitting around a long stone table. These were all demon generals. Most of them wore battle armor and a few wore black robes. The leader was a middle-aged demon man who was as strong as an iron tower and looked like an old bear. This person's strength had reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. He was Demon Lord War Soul, one of the top 10 of the 36 Demon Lord. At the same time, he was also the main general of the West Camp. The strength of the other 15 demon generals was between the 2nd and 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Just as Ji Tianxing expected, more than a dozen demon generals had secretly gathered to discuss countermeasures. Just now, the scouts reported that the human army has been discovered outside the camp. There are at least 400,000 of them. Are the humans crazy? How dare they attack us with only 400,000 soldiers? It must be Ji Tianxing. Only a lunatic would dare to do such a crazy thing. He is digging his own grave. Let's defend with all our strength. I want to see how the 400,000 human army can kill their way into the camp. Everyone, don't forget Ji Tianxing's usual tricks. He will definitely sneak into the camp first to create a disaster and assassinate us and the Blood God. Previously, when he saved the White Frost Empire, he did this and won all the battles without a single defeat. It is said that the Azura Demon Saint and Shui Pao Patriarch were defeated by Ji Tianxing. His strength has already reached the Saint realm. Even if we join forces, we can't defeat him. Humph. We are no match for him. But does he dare to break into the camp alone and face millions of soldiers? More than a dozen demon generals argued endlessly. Some advocated to defend with all their strength, while others suggested to ambush Ji Tianxing together. In a short time, they could not reach a consensus. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing quietly released the power of his divine soul. It turned into more than 20 invisible arrows, and attacked the guards around the secret chamber. Swish! Swish! In the next moment, more than 20 demon guards were all hit by the arrows. Their divine souls were shattered on the spot, and they died instantly. Their corpses were cut off and slowly fell to the ground, making slight bumping sounds. Even so, some of the demon generals in the secret chamber were alarmed. One of the demon generals suddenly stood up and shouted in a low voice, "Something is happening!" More than a dozen demon generals quieted down and released their divine senses to check the situation outside the secret chamber. Seeing that more than 20 guards were dead, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they all let out exclamations and shouts. Enemy attack! It's Ji Tianxing! It must be him! Don't panic, everyone. Let's join forces to deal with him. We can definitely hold him back. In a moment, more than a dozen demon generals took out their weapons and magic treasures. They were on high alert and vigilant. Ji Tianxing sneered and said in a low voice, "All of you are here. It saves me the trouble of looking for you. Now I will send all of you to hell." As he spoke, he held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the door of the secret chamber. Heavenly Dragon Slash. Following Ji Tianxing's cold shout, a dazzling golden light lit up behind him, and a soaring golden dragon's shadow appeared. Roar! The five-clawed golden dragon let out a high-pitched dragon roar. The sword of burial of heaven also slashed out a giant golden sword that was 100 meters long and slashed at the black secret chamber. Chapter 21:10. A thunderous sound exploded in the depths of the palace. At that moment, the defensive array of the secret room was destroyed by the giant golden sword. The sturdy black stone secret room was also split in half by the giant sword, and shattered stones flew everywhere. A deafening sound spread throughout the entire Devil Race's camp. The destructive shock wave instantly destroyed the entire palace, causing it to collapse into ruins. The entire camp began to tremble, and cracks began to appear on the ground. In the dust, Ji Tianxing, wrapped in golden light, soared into the sky. "Celestial Dragon Tyrant Body!" he roared, and a sacred golden light surged out of his body. His body immediately became a dozen times larger. In a flash, he became a 30-meter tall golden-armored giant, exuding a violent and domineering aura. The golden armor on the surface of his body was made up of hundreds of dragon scales. It looked very mighty and shocking. At the same time, his defense, strength, and speed had increased by more than 5 times. He stood proudly above the ruins, holding the giant burial of heaven sword in his right hand. He pointed it at the ground and let out an earth-shaking roar. Today, I, Ji Tianqing, will kill 1,000,000 demons and teach North Underworld Mountain an unforgettable lesson. His voice was like rolling thunder, reverberating in the sky above the West Camp, shaking the eardrums of every demon. Countless people looked up at the sky, glaring at him and roaring angrily. In the ruins under Ji Tianqing's feet, a scarlet demon light lit up again, and there was a cracking sound. Demon Monarch War Soul and the 6 demon generals pushed aside the rubble in a sorry state and staggered out. The sword just now had killed several demon generals on the spot. But Demon Monarch War Soul and the 6 demon generals were only seriously injured, and did not die on the spot. The 7 of them were covered in blood, and they were severely injured. After rushing out of the ruins, they did not dare to attack Ji Tianqing at all, and immediately scattered and fled. But Ji Tianqing's left palm struck out 5-colored divine lightning, and his right hand swung the sword 49 times. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 49 silver sword lights blossomed like lotuses and struck the 6 demon generals. The 6 demon generals were killed on the spot by the sword light. Their corpses turned into minced meat and blood, and their divine souls were also shattered. At the same time, the 5-colored divine lightning struck Demon Monarch Warsoul, turning him into a charred corpse. His corpse fell from the sky and smashed into a palace, shattering into a pile of debris. Demon Monarch Warsoul was also killed by the 5-colored divine lightning. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked around. He saw that the sky was filled with the figures of the devil race experts, who were rushing over to kill him like a tide. In the black fog not far away, there were a few invisible blood gods illusions sneaking over, preparing to launch a sneak attack. On the ground, tens of thousands of demon soldiers had gathered into 9 square formations. They were controlling the demon Dao formations and releasing destructive attacks. In an instant, the sky was filled with layers of demonic shadows and murderous auras. Countless rays of bloody light, demonic light, and magical light flooded over like a flood. Ji Tianqing fell into a tight encirclement and was about to be drowned out by the tens of thousands of devil soldiers. However, he did not panic in the face of danger. His expression did not change. He ignored all the attacks. His left hand formed a seal and his right hand waved the sword of burial of heaven, using his trump card. Unstoppable heavenly lightning. Under his control, all the lightning energy within a radius of 20,000 miles was gathered together. Terrifying heavenly lightning also fell from the 9 heavens. Hundreds of heavenly thunder-light pillars struck down from the sky. The dazzling lightning illuminated the entire camp. Boom, boom, boom. The lightning poured down from the sky, covering a radius of 50 miles and exploding with deafening sounds. With Ji Tianqing as the center, the area within 50 miles became a sea of lightning. The magical attacks of tens of thousands of devil soldiers were all shattered by the lightning. Countless houses and buildings were blasted into smithereens, and the ground was scorched. Batch after batch of devil soldiers were struck into charcoal and fell to the ground. It was as if doomsday had arrived, and the world was about to be destroyed. Except for Ji Tianqing, no one could withstand such a terrifying heavenly lightning bombardment. After a full 10 breaths, the earth-shattering sounds gradually dissipated. The lightning and smoke that pervaded the camp also gradually disappeared. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared in the sky once again. He was 10 feet tall, shining with golden light, and exuding a mighty and sacred aura. The camp under his feet had become scorched earth, and all that could be seen were ruins. The dark and smoking ground was covered with deep pits and cracks, and there were broken walls and black ashes everywhere. Not only were the tens of thousands of devil soldiers that besieged him killed, but even the devil soldiers that were closer to him were also killed. There were also tens of thousands of devil soldiers who were affected by the power of the heavenly lightning bombardment. It was a scene of heavy casualties. For a moment, the entire devil camp was silent. Hundreds of thousands of people were horrified. They stared at the sky, dumbfounded, and stared at Ji Tianqing. Their purple and blood-red eyes were filled with unparalleled terror and fear. Such an unkillable guy could trigger the power of the heavenly lightning. He was simply a killing machine on the battlefield, an absolute killing god. Every devil felt a strong sense of powerlessness from the bottom of their hearts. They could do nothing to Ji Tianqing, but Ji Tianqing could slaughter them wantonly. This was simply too sullen, making people vomit blood in anger. After a moment of silence, the devil soldiers all around all let out roars of grief and indignation, cursing wildly. There were even many experts and warriors who were not afraid of death, charging over dauntlessly. Like a black wave, they drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing's left hand brandished a fist, and his right hand brandished a sword, fighting fiercely in the crowd. Bam bam bam! Each fist light and palm shadow would smash a pile of devils into pieces, splattering minced meat and blood all over the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The burial of heaven's sword scattered sword light all over the sky. Sometimes it formed a fierce sword array, sometimes it condensed into brilliant starlight, and sometimes it turned into an ancient divine beast, bursting with terrifying power. But any devil that was swept by the sword light could not escape the fate of being smashed to pieces. Tens of thousands of devil experts besieged Ji Tianqing, but no one could block one of his moves, and the attacks released by the devil experts were very difficult to hit Ji Tianqing. He basically dodged all of them. Even if there were some magical attacks that did hit him, it was like scratching an itch, not causing him any injury. Ji Tianqing fought fiercely in the sky, like a fierce tiger in a flock of sheep, sweeping everything in his path, unparalleled in his slaughter. In a short quarter of an hour, he actually killed nearly 200,000 devils. Of the remaining 700,000 devils, 400,000 were guarding the four directions of the camp. The other 300,000 were thinking of ways to deal with Ji Tianqing, even forming battle formations to besiege him. But these were all useless.